If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 160, Iron Sand Defense. But this was a good thing, Kaminari thought with a smile in his heart. He then began to attempt using his mental energy to control the electromagnetic force surrounding his body and direct it downward. Sure enough, under the influence of the electromagnetic force, the iron particles in the soil began to tremble. As Kaminari's excitement grew, the frequency of the tremors increased. Rise! Kaminari shouted in his mind. The next moment, with the bamboo pole he stood on as the center, a radius of 5 meters erupted with iron sand from the soil. The particles surged upward and gathered into 10 black clouds, floating in a circular formation around him. It worked. Kaminari scanned his surroundings with his radar. When he saw the black iron clouds encircling him, he felt a surge of joy and even an urge to cry. Finally, my ability has come into its own. These iron sands represent a level of fine control that rivals Misaka Mikoto herself. He was so excited that he overlooked one small detail: Misaka Mikoto could directly manipulate electronic devices. In comparison, Kaminari was only managing electromagnetic force, and the precision between the two was vastly different. As for raw power, the gap was even greater. Misaka Mikoto could summon thunderclouds to call down real lightning, capable of delivering over 1 billion volts. But that was something Kaminari could reflect on later, once he'd calmed down. What's going on over there? At that moment, Edshot, who had just finished breakfast and was tidying up the dishes, stepped outside and saw Kaminari's display. He automatically became an observer, watching from a distance. This kid's always coming up with something new, Edshot muttered to himself. Though he had only been staying with Kaminari for less than a week, he admired the boy's creativity and drive. Ah, youth! Full of surprises. Just as Edshot was reflecting on this, the hairs on his body suddenly stood on end. His instincts kicked in, setting off alarms in his mind. Swish! In the blink of an eye, dozens of slender black needles shot out from the iron clouds and pierced the ground where Edshot had just been standing. His figure blurred into an afterimage as he dodged to a safer position. Not bad, kid. But the assault wasn't over. Wave after wave of needle-like iron shards launched from the black clouds, targeting Edshot relentlessly. Each time the needles hit the ground, they returned to the black clouds, merging back into the swirling formation. This brat! Edshot's expression shifted as he entered a combat-ready stance. From this point onward, he was no longer just Edshot, he was the ninja hero, Edshot, Japan's number 5 pro hero. So, you want to challenge me, hey? Edshot's lips curled into a faint smile. Alright, let's see what you've got, Kaminari. Without hesitation, Edshot transformed into a long, thin blur and fearlessly dashed toward Kaminari, who remained atop the bamboo pole. Swish! The black needles fired again, but this time Edshot weaved through them effortlessly. His agility allowed him to dodge every needle in the barrage as he continued to close the distance. Incredible! Kaminari thought, his radar tracking every move. He dodged all the black needles in an instant. Is this the technique Master talked about before? Edshot's movements were so refined that he no longer needed his usual acceleration techniques to enhance his speed. Still, Kaminari clenched his fists. But I won't go down that easily. In the next moment, the black cloud stopped firing needles and instead released dense streams of iron sand, flooding the area with sheer volume. Let's see how you get out of this one, Master. Kaminari thought to himself. However, Edshot wasn't fazed. As the iron sand swarmed toward him, his body twisted in midair with incredible precision, abruptly changing his trajectory. With an elegant motion, he soared upward, avoiding the attack entirely. Then, drawing a graceful arc through the sky, Edshot dived straight for Kaminari once more. It's useless, Kaminari muttered under his breath. My radar can pinpoint your exact location, even through all this iron sand. Bang! The first sonic boom from Edshot's paper-thin arm attack was blocked by the black cloud shielding Kaminari. Swish! Bang! For the next several minutes, the fight became a back-and-forth of offense and defense. Kaminari used his black clouds to shield himself from countless high-speed attacks while trying to launch counterattacks with the iron sand. Edshot's unparalleled speed created the illusion of multiple afterimages surrounding Kaminari. These phantom clones launched attacks from every angle, vanishing only to be replaced by new ones seconds later. If someone else had been watching this spectacle like Kosuke earlier, they would have witnessed a dazzling scene, dozens of edge-shot-like figures besieging Kaminari, who stood in the middle of it all, protected by swirling black clouds. This method of controlling iron sand doesn't take much physical energy, Kaminari thought, sweat forming on his brow, and the electricity consumption is minimal. But it's mentally exhausting. Constant concentration is required, especially against Master's relentless, high-speed attacks. Indeed, his forehead was visibly drenched, and the fight had only lasted 10 minutes. No wonder Misaka Mikoto can control iron sand whenever she wants but rarely uses it as often as someone like Gaara. The mental strain must be the issue, Kaminari realized. After all, Gaara's sand has a will of its own, but my iron sand requires constant manipulation. Edgeshot, meanwhile, had also picked up on a change in the black clouds. Their reaction speed is slowing, he noted, narrowing his eyes. This technique must have its limitations. Is it a matter of time, or something else? Pondering this, Edgeshot suddenly accelerated, breaking past the speed of sound. It's over. A loud sonic boom followed, but Kaminari heard Edgeshot's words before the sound reached him. Crash! The next moment, the iron sand protecting Kaminari collapsed. All the particles fell to the ground like raindrops, leaving the previously green patch of land coated in black. Chapter 161, Hunter and Prey. A large flock of birds of various colors, seemingly startled, flapped their wings furiously and ascended into the sky from the vast expanse of Aokigahara's forest. Each bird scattered in a different direction, their cries fading into the distance. This was the western and southern edge of Aokigahara's sea of trees. Yet to most people, there was no noticeable difference between the two regions, the scenery looked the same no matter where one stood. Run! Run! A desperate shout suddenly echoed through the forest. It was a man's voice, loud, but trembling with anxiety. No. I can't leave you behind. Another male voice followed, younger and higher pitched, though it quivered with fear. Enough with the nonsense. The first voice snapped back. In a situation like this, there's only one thing to do: run. The undergrowth not far ahead began to shake violently, and a young man stumbled out, clutching a black shotgun. He was disheveled, his movements frantic, and he kept glancing back over his shoulder. Behind him, the sounds of the forest grew louder and more chaotic, as though something massive was tearing its way through the trees. The dense canopy above blocked out most of the sunlight, casting the area in deep shadow. Suddenly, with a loud crash, something huge burst from the jungle. Boom! A dark shadow hurtled out from the trees, tumbling across the ground several times before coming to a stop. Grandpa! The young man's face paled as he ran toward the fallen figure. If Kaminari had been present at this moment, he would have immediately recognized them as the grandfather and grandson pair he had met on the Shinkansen: Hideo Sato and Ryoichi Sato, the so-called Matagi hunters. Cough, cough. I'm fine, the older man gasped, his voice strained. I managed to block it with my spear. Hideo Sato, a man in his 60s, tried to reassure his grandson. Yet his face was pale, and his breathing labored. He glanced at his steel spear with lingering fear. A deep dent marred its shaft, the weapon had saved his life just moments ago. If the spear hadn't absorbed the brunt of the blow, he would have been killed instantly. Even so, both his hands were bleeding, the skin split from the force of the attack. It's too strong, far beyond what a normal bear should be capable of, Hideo muttered, his expression grim. The sound of cracking wood cut him off. Ahead of them, the three largest trees in their line of sight snapped like twigs under immense force, falling to the ground with deafening crashes. Emerging from the wreckage was a terrifying creature. Roar! A massive black bear, as tall as a small building, stepped into view. Its bloodshot eyes glared at the pair with unbridled rage. Its roar was deafening, carrying pure, primal fury. What a terrible mistake! Hideo muttered, his face contorted with regret. I didn't realize, the one I lured out was its cub. Days earlier, when they first arrived at Aokigahara, the two had spent their time searching for the so-called legendary 3-meter bear. Although they had encountered several ordinary black bears, none matched the description of the mythical beast. But early that morning, luck seemed to be on their side, they stumbled upon the cave of what they believed to be the giant bear. Wasting no time, Hideo set up a large bear trap and used gentari bamboo, a type of bait irresistible to black bears. However, the first creature to emerge wasn't the legendary bear, but a cub barely a meter tall. When the cub triggered the trap, its arms were broken instantly, and its agonized cries echoed through the forest. The smell of blood soon attracted its mother, who turned out to be far larger than expected, closer to 5 meters in height than 3. From that point onward, things had spiraled out of control. Hideo, despite being an experienced Magi hunter with decades of expertise and strength that rivaled professional heroes, was completely outmatched by the enraged beast. Faced with its near-impenetrable hide and overwhelming power, Hideo had no choice but to retreat, relying on his knowledge of black bear behavior and his agility to evade death. But this was no longer about hunting, it was about survival. Bang! 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 Stay back! Don't come any closer! Ryoichi's hands shook as he fired his shotgun at the bear, his legs trembling with fear. But the bear didn't flinch. The weapon might as well have been a toy against its thick hide. Stop wasting ammunition and run! Hideo shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed his spear and charged the beast once more. Ryoichi, listen to me. I've spent my life hunting black bears, hundreds of them. If I die here, under the claws of this bear king, so be it. That's an honorable death for a Magi hunter. But you're the next in line. You're the future of this profession. If you die here, the legacy of the Magi hunters ends with you. Do you want that? Despite his age, Hideo's movements were sharp and precise. He dodged the bear's massive claws, striking at its weak points whenever he could. Yet every attack was blocked by its thick, impenetrable fur. His eyes glinted with an unnatural yellow hue, his quirk, Hawkeye. It enhanced all aspects of his vision, granting him an ultra-wide field of view and exceptional dynamic sight. Technically, using his quirk during work hours without a hero license was illegal, even though he held a hunting permit. But none of that mattered now. His only concern was buying enough time for Ryoichi to escape. I can't leave you! Ryoichi cried, his face streaked with tears. I can't do it. You have to! Hideo roared back. Do you want me to die filled with regret? In that moment of distraction, Hideo's reaction faltered for just a second. Boom! The bear's massive paw struck him with full force, sending him flying like a ragdoll. Grandpa! Ryoichi's scream tore through the forest as he watched Hideo's body hurtle toward a tree. Blood sprayed into the air, and the impact was certain to be fatal. But just as Hideo was about to collide with the trunk, a crackling burst of electricity split the tense atmosphere. ZZZZT. A flash of golden light streaked through the air, catching Hideo mid-flight and gently lowering him to safety. Looks like you've gotten yourself into some trouble. A familiar voice said. Chapter 162, Thought, Soul, Support. In the ninja camp, Kaminari had gone out on patrol, leaving Edgeshot stationed at the base alone. Thankfully, since the death of his master, Edgeshot had long grown accustomed to solitude. At least, that's what he used to believe, until meeting Kaminari. Now, for the first time in years, he found himself appreciating the company of someone sharp and inventive. Kaminari's curious mind and constant drive to create something new had, in a way, reminded him of the joys of mentorship. Edgeshot's attention was drawn to his laptop as a notification popped up on the screen. Last night, after 8 p.m., an arrest was made, the hero killer was apprehended. Stain. Edgeshot muttered to himself, his sharp eyes narrowing. Of course, he knew of Stain, the infamous villain who had become notorious in recent years. He was equally aware of how dangerous Stain could be. Endeavor, hey? Makes sense. If anyone could take down someone like Stain, it'd be him. But... He paused, puzzled. Isn't Endeavor's agency in Tokyo? Why was he in Hosa City? Did he go there specifically to capture Stain? Edgeshot scrolled further through the article while running through the situation in his mind. That's when the names of 3 familiar students caught his attention, Izuku Midoriya, Tinya Ida, and Shoto Todoroki. The news article briefly mentioned their involvement but didn't provide much detail. It only stated that the 3 Class 1A students had encountered Stain and were rescued by Endeavor at the critical moment. They're Kaminari's classmates, aren't they? Still, Edgeshot didn't linger on their mention for long. Of the 3, only Shoto Todoroki piqued his interest, and that was primarily because of his background and exceptional talent. As he continued scrolling, his eyes caught on a video thumbnail. Its view count had already surpassed 5.31 million, and something about it immediately demanded his attention. Edgeshot clicked play, feeling an odd sense that this video carried significance that ignoring it might leave him with regrets. The video began with a narrator speaking in a calm, neutral tone. The hero killer, Stain. Real name, Akaguro Chizome. Inspired by All Might's debut, he resolved to become a hero himself. He later enrolled in a private high school but quickly grew disillusioned. In his own words, the education system revealed the corruption at the core of what it meant to be a hero. Akaguro dropped out during his first year, and by the time he turned 20, he began advocating for a return to the core ideals of heroism. He gave speeches on the streets, calling for reform. But in time, he came to believe that words hold no power, and abandoned this approach. Over the next decade, he taught himself combat skills and honed his techniques, preparing for what he saw as his duty. During this period, both of his parents passed away. There are no indications of foul play regarding their deaths. Stain's philosophy centers on the belief that heroism should not be driven by greed or personal gain. Only through self-sacrifice does one earn the right to be called a hero. He regards modern heroes as fraudulent, empty figures. Through his purges, he seeks to awaken society to the true meaning of heroism. The video transitioned to footage of Stain himself. On the screen, he staggered forward, his glowing red eyes filled with intensity. He bellowed, his voice hoarse yet commanding. Someone has to bathe in blood. Someone has to awaken the true heroes. Come, you imposters. The only one worthy of killing me is a true hero. All Might. The video ended abruptly, leaving Edgeshot sitting in silence. His expression had grown tense and serious. He wasn't moved by Stain's conviction, no first-rate hero would be so easily swayed. To reach their level, every pro-hero had already forged their own ideals of heroism. But the implications of the video left Edgeshot deeply unsettled. Who created this? He muttered. It couldn't have been the government. Nor did it seem like something Stain himself would produce. So who had the knowledge of Stain's past to compile this footage? The details presented in the video, some of which went back over 30 years, were troubling in and of themselves. The Hero Public Safety Commission previously mentioned that Stain had aligned himself with the group that attacked USJ. What were they called? The League of Villains. Edgeshot frowned. Could they have produced this? The timing of the video's release was suspicious. It had been uploaded immediately after Stain's capture, suggesting it had been prepared in advance. That meant the events in Hosa City were not random, they were planned. The more Edgeshot thought about it, the more he began to suspect that the League of Villains wasn't as disorganized as they initially seemed. Even their attack on USJ might have been part of a larger strategy. If the USJ attack was meant to announce their presence to the world, then what's the purpose of this Stain incident? Edgeshot replayed the video, his sharp mind dissecting its contents. When it ended again, a single word escaped his lips. Ideology. The goal this time is to inject their core beliefs into society, to give their organization a purpose, a soul. Edgeshot's gaze darkened as his thoughts accelerated. Through this incident, the League of Villains has captured public attention once again. And with Stain's ideology broadcast so widely, they're likely to attract followers, many of whom could be dangerous in their own right. A sense of foreboding swept over Edgeshot. He could feel the storm brewing on the horizon. Ring, ring, ring. The sudden ringing of his phone jolted him from his thoughts. Glancing at the screen, he saw a message from Kaminari. Southwest. A 5-meter giant bear. Edgeshot didn't hesitate. In the next instant, his body blurred, leaving a long afterimage behind as he shot out of the wooden cabin like an arrow. He didn't even bother to open the door, phasing straight through it. Kaminari, don't do anything reckless. Protect yourself, but don't kill the bear. He remembered Kaminari's devastating move, Raikiri. Though All Might had sealed it at his request, Edgeshot couldn't be certain Kaminari would abide by that restriction. Ultimately, the decision was Kaminari's to make. Chapter 163, vs. Giant Bear. 15 minutes earlier. Hey, are you alright? You're that boy. Sato Ryoichi's tear-streaked face was filled with shock. First, he hadn't expected anyone to show up. Second, Kaminari looked entirely different from the way he had on the Shinkansen. Kaminari nodded calmly. His gaze shifted to the old man in his arms, pale, bleeding, and gasping weakly for air. Without hesitation, he spoke. Pikachu hemostatic agent. Yes, master. A small, 5 cm long syringe extended from the golden gauntlet on Kaminari's left hand. He handed it to Ryoichi. Give this to your grandfather. Initially, Kaminari had intended to inject it himself, but the furious giant bear wasn't going to wait. Kaminari gently set the old man down on the ground, passed the syringe to Ryoichi, and dashed toward the rampaging bear. Kaminari wasn't planning to fight it head-on. He wasn't that reckless, this bear was clearly something extraordinary. With a powerful leap, Kaminari launched himself into the air, reaching the same height as the bear's massive head. For a brief moment, their eyes met, Kaminari's calm, golden gaze clashed with the bear's crazed, bloodshot pupils. Maximum illumination. Buzz. In an instant, the golden armor covering Kaminari, resembling a saint's ceremonial garb, flared with an intense, dazzling light. The brilliance was so overwhelming that Ryoichi, crouching behind Kaminari as he injected his grandfather with the hemostatic agent, instinctively shut his eyes. The bear roared in pain, its massive paws swiping blindly as it struggled against the searing light. Roar! Taking advantage of the bear's momentary blindness, Kaminari moved behind it, inhaling deeply. He gathered the golden energy crackling around him, then unleashed it. Lightning Dragon's Roar! Boom! A column of golden energy erupted from Kaminari's mouth, slamming into the bear's back. The attack expanded upon impact, engulfing the bear in a brilliant golden bowl of energy. Zzzzzt. The sound of crackling electricity grew louder as Kaminari's right hand raised. A small iron coin, resting against his gauntlet, began to glow with electromagnetic energy. Electromagnetic railgun. With a flick of his finger, the coin shot forward at hypersonic speed, becoming a piercing beam of light that disappeared into the golden explosion. Kaminari wasn't holding back. Protecting endangered species was the last thing on his mind. The bear's murderous intent had been clear, and its rampage had left 2 lives hanging by a thread. Whatever had caused this mess didn't matter, what mattered was stopping the bear from harming anyone else. In Kaminari's mind, this wasn't about morality or reasoning. It was about survival, a fundamental conflict between humans and a beast that had chosen violence. When the golden light finally faded, the bear emerged from the destruction. It was still standing tall, its vitality seemingly untouched. Its enraged roar echoed across the forest. What? Kaminari muttered, stunned. The lightning dragon's roar didn't even faze it. He squinted, noticing only a slight singe where the railgun had hit. The railgun barely took off a layer of fur. How thick is this thing's skin? The bear roared again, turning its bloodshot gaze toward Kaminari, its focus now solely on him. Though his attacks hadn't inflicted much damage, they had succeeded in redirecting its attention away from Hideo and his grandson. Well, if one railgun didn't work, let's see how 2 do. Kaminari remained calm, though his mind was working quickly. 2 iron coins, crafted from iron sand, appeared in his palm. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed them into the air in front of him. Closing his eyes, Kaminari entered a meditative state. Pale golden currents sparked around the coins, forming visible circular tracks as they accelerated. Electromagnetic railgun double shot. Swish! Swish! The 2 iron coins transformed into streaks of light, shooting toward the charging bear. Kaminari didn't stay idle, though. With a wave of his hand, he expanded his electromagnetic field, drawing more iron sand from the surrounding soil to gather around him. From afar, Ryoichi and his grandfather watched in awe. Kaminari, cloaked in golden armor and surrounded by swirling iron sand, looked otherworldly, a figure of both power and serenity. Roar! Boom! Boom! The bear swung its massive paws, swatting the incoming railgun shots aside like they were flies. Other than a faint glow from the high temperature, its paws remained unharmed. The attack had slowed its advance, but not by much. This thing! Kaminari thought, his focus intensifying. Its paw speed is insane. It deflected both railgun shots. It was now clear to Kaminari that this was no ordinary bear. A larger-than-average black bear was one thing, but this creature was on another level entirely. It has to be a quirk. That's the only explanation for this kind of strength. Whoosh! Kaminari raised his hand, and the gathered iron sand surged forward like a massive black wave. The sand engulfed the bear, slowing its movements further. But Kaminari wasn't done. As the bear struggled against the sea of sand, he pushed his electromagnetic control to its limits, drawing even more iron sand from the surrounding area to strengthen the wave. 100 meters. Kaminari thought, feeling the strain of his reach. That's my limit. half of what Misaka Mikoto could manage. Despite the strain, the bear continued to push forward, taking massive steps through the dense sand. Its progress was slower, but it was still advancing. This won't hold it, Kaminari realized. I need something stronger. In the next moment, the iron sand began to compress and reshape itself under Kaminari's control. Slowly, the loose wave of sand solidified into a thick, silver snake. Ryoichi and his grandfather stared in shock as the enormous steel serpent coiled itself around the bear, its metallic body shimmering under the sunlight. The bear struggled, roaring ferociously, but the steel snake held firm, binding its movements. Kaminari allowed himself a small smile. This steel serpent, it's working. Chapter 164, Steel Construct. At the center of the battlefield, it was now a clash of titans, the massive iron construct and the enraged giant bear. Wrestling? Hey! Kaminari mused. If this goes on, my steel serpent is definitely going to win. After all, it doesn't get tired or have physical limitations like a living creature. He paused, his brow furrowing in realization. Wait, that's not exactly true. Kaminari's eyes flickered with understanding. While the steel serpent didn't have physical limits, he certainly did. His ability to control the iron sand swarm only lasted about 10 minutes before the strain on his body became too much. This wasn't speculation, it was a fact proven through prior training. Looks like I need to finish this quickly, Kaminari sighed internally. Who knows how long this bear can keep going? I wanted to subdue it without killing it, but... His golden eyes narrowed as his resolve hardened. Guess I'll have to turn up the pressure. With that, Kaminari adjusted his strategy, gathering more electromagnetic force. The next second, the mouth of the steel serpent began to glow with golden current, arcs of electricity crackling ominously as they built up. Electromagnetism, the unity of electricity and magnetism. Electricity generates magnetism, and magnetism generates electricity. Kaminari used his mental power to transform the currents he controlled into electric waves, channeling them through the snake. However, the source of this power wasn't the natural magnetic field of the Earth, it all came from Kaminari himself. He wasn't yet capable of harnessing external energy sources. Someday, if he reached that level, he'd never have to worry about exhausting his internal reserves. He could simply draw power from his surroundings and strike down anyone foolish enough to oppose him. But for now, the burden remained on his body. As the electromagnetic energy gathered in the steel serpent, its sharp iron teeth began to glow, coated in golden electricity. The sight alone gave off an unmistakable air of danger. Steel serpent, Thunder Fang! Kaminari commanded mentally. He winced a little at how dramatic it sounded but figured it was necessary to focus his intent. Whoosh! With a burst of speed, the steel serpent lunged, its electrified jaws clamping down on the giant bear's neck. Crackle! Zzzt! Electricity surged through the bear's thick fur, burning its skin and sending waves of paralyzing energy through its body. Roar! The bear roared in pain, shaking violently as it tried to throw the snake off. Its thick fur may have been enough to protect it from most attacks, but its neck remained a vulnerable point. The combination of piercing fangs, burning heat, and electrical paralysis overwhelmed even its immense durability. But the agony only served to enrage the beast further. Its eyes, already bloodshot, seemed to glow a feral red as it completely lost all sense of reason. Suddenly, the bear opened its massive jaws wide. What the? Kaminari's eyes shot open, his meditative focus momentarily shattered. From the bear's mouth, a crimson beam of energy blasted forth with incredible force. It wasn't simply blood spewing out, this was a focused, high-pressure attack. The beam tore through the steel serpent's body like a knife through paper, scattering iron sand in every direction. The entire snake construct collapsed in an instant. What just happened? Kaminari muttered, disbelief flooding his mind. Did that bear just fire a beam? Is this a joke? Even more absurd thoughts raced through his mind. What's next? Is it a Pokémon? Was that supposed to be Hyper Beam? Meanwhile, Ryoichi and Hideo, watching from a distance, were equally dumbfounded. What just happened? Ryoichi whispered, covering his nose and mouth. Ugh, it stinks. Hideo grimaced, leaning against his grandson for support. With the smell this strong, it must have spat out a massive amount of blood just now. The reality was that the bear's quirk wasn't giant size as they'd initially assumed. Instead, it had a unique ability to metabolize the flesh and blood of its prey, converting it into a substance that fueled its growth and strength. This energy, stored in its body, could also be weaponized, allowing it to unleash devastating, high-pressure blood blasts in times of desperation. As the remnants of the steel serpent reformed in front of Kaminari, he frowned. Looks like I need to change tactics. This time, instead of rebuilding the serpent, he reshaped the iron sand into something more suited for combat. The swirling mass compressed and condensed until a humanoid figure stood in its place, roughly 4 to 5 meters tall, with a spherical upper body and long, powerful limbs. The choice is clear, Kaminari thought, a hint of determination flashing across his face. Registeel activate. The newly formed Registeel raised its thick, claw-like hands, stepping forward to intercept the bear. Roar! The bear, now fully consumed by rage, opened its mouth again, gathering energy for another crimson beam. Its bloodshot eyes locked onto the Registeel spherical chest. You think I'll fall for the same move twice? Kaminari muttered under his breath, his tone calm but sharp. Golden energy began to gather at the top of the Registeel, forming a rapidly spinning orb of electricity. Registeel, fire the electromagnetic cannon. The orb condensed further, glowing with intensity as it built up over 2.5 million volts of energy. Boom! The Registeel unleashed its attack at the same moment the bear fired its crimson beam. The two forces collided in mid-air, clashing with raw, destructive power. For a few tense seconds, neither attack gave way. The electromagnetic cannon pushed forward, only to be forced back by the bear's blood beam, and then surged forward again. The struggle ended in a massive explosion, sending a shockwave rippling through the forest. Boom! The force of the blast was overwhelming. Hideo and Ryoichi, who had been watching from afar, were thrown off their feet by the sheer intensity of the detonation. As the smoke and energy cleared, half golden and half crimson light illuminated the battlefield. Kaminari's calm exterior didn't waver, but internally, he cursed. Ugh! I lost control of the power output. Chapter 165, Qualification. The electromagnetic cannon was different from the railgun. While the railgun relied on pure electromagnetic propulsion, the electromagnetic cannon harnessed both electric energy and centrifugal force generated by high-speed rotation. Though it lacked the piercing power of the railgun, it compensated with sheer destructive potential. In fact, it was Kaminari's most powerful attack yet. But such immense power came with a cost. When the electromagnetic cannon collided with the giant bear's blood-infused destruction beam, the resulting explosion didn't just obliterate the battlefield, it overwhelmed Kaminari's Registeel construct and directly endangered him. He had been too close to the center of the blast. Forced to abandon his meditative state, Kaminari cancelled his control over the Registeel. His survival instincts took over, and in a flash of desperation, he activated his high-voltage mode and retreated at the speed of sound. Picture it. A swirling ball of golden and crimson energy expanded violently, tearing through everything in its path. Trees, animals, and even the ground itself were consumed, leaving a barren crater in its wake. Kaminari ran, lightning surging through his body, the edge of the explosion only centimeters behind him. The expanding energy felt like it was breathing down his neck. He didn't need calculations or theories to know what would happen if it touched him. Even his cancer's golden cloth wouldn't protect him. He knew this with absolute certainty. The desire to survive screamed at him, warning him to keep running no matter what. Finally, just as the energy wave began to dissipate, Kaminari skidded to a halt, his breathing ragged. That was way too close. Kaminari muttered, the lingering fear evident in his wide eyes. He glanced back at the battlefield, where the explosion had carved out a massive crater. The devastation stretched for 50 meters in every direction. Looking at the barren, smoldering ground, Kaminari couldn't help but exhale in disbelief. This is insane. The radius alone is massive. He chuckled dryly, his confidence returning. But with that kind of power, even if that thing survived, it'd definitely be on its last legs. But as Kaminari scanned the battlefield, his smirk faded. There, in the middle of the crater, stood the 5-meter giant bear. Its once majestic black fur was charred, clumps of it burned away to reveal scorched, pitted skin. Black smoke rose from its battered frame, filling the air with the acrid stench of burning flesh. It had clearly taken severe damage, but it was still standing. Kaminari's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just resilience, this was something unnatural. The explosion hadn't just been his attack, it had also included the bear's own destruction beam. The combined force should have been enough to overwhelm even the toughest opponent. Yet, Somehow, it still refused to fall. The answer became clear as Kaminari observed the bear's movements. It was weakened. The massive creature's body swayed unsteadily, its energy depleted. The intense destruction beam had drained its reserves of blood energy. Kaminari now understood why that ability was only used in moments of desperation. Every time the bear fired one of those beams, it consumed a significant amount of its vital energy. And from the looks of it, this latest attack had pushed the bear to its limit. Roar! Even so, the giant bear let out a deafening roar, its bloodshot eyes fixed on Kaminari. It wasn't the roar of a king or a predator, it was the mournful, defiant cry of a mother who had lost everything. Kaminari's expression hardened. He didn't flinch, nor did he show pity. Instead, he crouched slightly and clasped his left hand over his right wrist. Maybe Hideo and his grandson did something unforgivable to you. Kaminari said quietly. But I'm sorry. I'm human. Zzzzzt. Golden electricity crackled in Kaminari's right hand, growing brighter and more intense with each passing second. The sound was sharper, harsher than anything he'd unleashed before, even the lightning dragon's roar and the electromagnetic cannon. On the other side, the giant bear's instincts kicked into overdrive. Every nerve in its body screamed of impending doom. Danger! 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 Roar! The bear, now more beast than creature, roared again, its primal instincts driving it to fight. But the advanced AI in Kaminari's battlesuit, Pikachu, had already confirmed through scans that the bear's current strength was at its lowest. It couldn't win. It's time to end this, Kaminari muttered. His golden eyes glinted with resolve. Under this Raikiri, even the heavens would split. The electric energy in Kaminari's palm condensed into a dark golden sphere, crackling wildly with power. In a flash of light, Kaminari vanished, leaving only a streak of golden lightning in his wake. Roar! The bear felt it, a cold, deadly pressure bearing down on it. In desperation, it opened its mouth one last time, gathering the remnants of its strength. Buzz! A blood-colored energy cluster formed in its jaws, but this time its once mighty body visibly shrank. Its desperation had forced it to sacrifice more of its already depleted reserves. Boom! With a roar filled with rage, despair, and sorrow, the bear unleashed its final attack. A massive beam of blood-red energy tore through the air, hurtling toward the golden streak that was Kaminari. The two forces collided. Zzzzzt. Instead of exploding, the two attacks ground against each other, like claws tearing through fabric. Kaminari pushed forward, his dark golden sphere tearing apart the blood-red beam with sheer, unrelenting power. Meter by meter, he closed the distance between himself and the bear. I hope you are reincarnated as something else in your next life. Kaminari said solemnly as he approached. To his surprise, the words didn't come from a place of arrogance, they carried a genuine sense of finality, almost like a prayer. But just as Kaminari prepared to deliver the finishing blow, a voice rang out. Stop! Kaminari! The voice was familiar, sharp, and commanding. Before Kaminari could process what was happening, a streak of white shot through the air at twice the speed of sound. It coiled around Kaminari's wrist, yanking it away from the bear and slamming the charged Raikiri into the ground. Boom! The ground erupted, but the bear remained untouched. Another streak of white wrapped around the bear's neck, pulling it to the ground with surprising gentleness. Though the bear was immobilized, it was still alive. Master! Kaminari exclaimed, staring at the figure that had suddenly appeared. Standing not far from him was Edgeshot, his sharp eyes calm yet firm. Kaminari, Edgeshot said, his voice steady but grave, we are not qualified to kill it. Kaminari blinked, stunned. His mind raced, but no words came out. In the distance, the blurry figures of Hideo and Ryoichi could be seen, though they were too far away to intervene. What? Kaminari whispered, frozen in place. The battlefield fell silent, leaving Kaminari to grapple with the weight of Edgeshot's words. What explanation could his master possibly give? Chapter 166, Kaminari's Choice. What do you mean we're not qualified to kill this bear? Kaminari frowned, clearly confused and frustrated. This giant bear is 20 times more dangerous than an ordinary black bear. He argued. It's full of hatred for humans. If we don't kill it now, what are we supposed to do? Stick it in a zoo. Edgeshot, however, remained calm. I'm not saying it can't be killed, he replied. I'm saying we don't have the qualifications to do so. Qualifications? Kaminari exclaimed, his frustration boiling over. What qualifications do we need to put down a monster that's already attacked people? Edshot's expression didn't waver as he began to explain. The black bear is a species listed as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Threatened Species, he said. In Japan, black bears were once found across Kyushu, Honshu, and Shikoku. But the population in Kyushu went extinct decades ago. Every black bear left in the wild must be treated with caution. That's why our laws strictly prohibit killing black bears without the proper authorization. Edshot's tone grew serious as he continued. And by law, we are not authorized to kill this bear. You're saying we can't kill it? Then what are we supposed to just let it go? Kaminari shot back, his tone sharp. Edshot sighed but remained patient. Of course not. As you said, it's far too dangerous to let it go. The best course of action is to restrain it, notify the police, and let them hand it over to professional hunters. Hunters? Kaminari raised an eyebrow. That's right, Edshot nodded. Even we, as heroes, aren't allowed to hunt black bears without a bear hunting license. Neither are the police. Then who does have a bear hunting license? Kaminari's irritation flared. This is ridiculous. There are so many rules, regulations, and red tape. Professional hunters, Edshot answered simply. Usually, when a black bear attacks, either we or the police contact the local hunting club to send someone over. Hunting club? Kaminari's golden eyes flickered toward Hideo and Ryoichi Sato in the distance, still standing silently nearby. So, if we find a professional hunter with a bear hunting license, we can kill this bear legally. That's correct, Edshot replied, following Kaminari's gaze toward the two Matagi hunters. His eyes narrowed slightly as realization struck him. And it seems we already have hunters here, don't we? Without another word, Kaminari strode past Edshot and walked toward Hideo and Ryoichi. Excuse me, he asked directly, do either of you have a bear hunting license? Hideo and Ryoichi exchanged a glance before the elder nodded. Of course, Hideo replied. Not only do I have one, but Ryoichi does as well. He earned his license just last year. The old man's voice carried a note of pride as he spoke of his grandson's achievement. That's perfect, Kaminari said with a faint smile. Here's the situation, while we had the authority to fight the giant bear, we're not legally qualified to finish it off. So, could I ask you to take care of it? Kaminari emphasized the word qualified, a sharp undertone in his voice as he said it. To his surprise, Hideo hesitated before shaking his head. I'm sorry, Hideo said gravely. Though I appreciate you saving us, as a Matagi hunter, I cannot agree to your request. What? Kaminari asked, frowning in disbelief. Hideo explained, his tone resolute. Matagi hunters have their own traditions. Matagi hunters do not finish off animals that others have subdued. Bear hunting must always be the work of the Matagi themselves, from beginning to end. That is the sacred tradition we've upheld for centuries. Kaminari's jaw tightened. He let out a hollow laugh, anger simmering beneath the surface. Rules, traditions. Is everyone just obsessed with following arbitrary rules today? At that moment, Edshot walked over. What's wrong? He asked. Kaminari lowered his voice, explaining Hideo's refusal. In that case, Edshot said thoughtfully, we'll have to stabilize the bear's condition and transfer it to the authorities. They can handle it. Kaminari didn't agree. To him, it was far simpler and safer to end the threat here and now. Record the act as evidence, leave the bear's body to nourish the ecosystem, and move on. For such a dangerous creature, this seemed like the most logical solution. His gaze shifted to Ryoichi, who was crouching nearby, his expression troubled. A thought struck Kaminari, and he addressed the young man. Your name is Ryoichi, right? Ryoichi looked up, startled. Ah, yes. We met on the Shinkansen before, he replied nervously. Why did you and your grandfather come all the way out here to hunt this giant bear? Kaminari asked, his voice calm but probing. Well. Ryoichi hesitated, glancing at his grandfather before lowering his head. It was to make a name for ourselves. He sighed and continued, his voice filled with frustration. After black bears were listed as protected animals, we Matagi could only hunt them in small numbers, and even then, only under strict conditions. Applying for a bear hunting license is a long and complicated process, so many descendants of ghost hunters have simply given up the profession entirely. With no one left to carry on the traditions and no attention from the outside world, my grandfather and I were worried that the legacy of the Magi would disappear. Ryoichi paused before adding quietly, so, when we heard about the 3-meter black bear causing havoc, I suggested we take it down ourselves to bring the Magi name back into the spotlight. Ryoichi. Hideo interrupted sternly. But you cannot go against tradition. I've told you this countless times. What makes us sacred is our adherence to those traditions. Kaminari's golden eyes narrowed. He sensed an opportunity. Ryoichi, he said softly, look at that bear. That's no ordinary 3-meter black bear. It's a 5-meter giant that's awakened a quirk, a true bear king. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. Think about it. If a photo of you standing proudly over this bear, sword in hand, was published in the media, you'd instantly become a legend. The strongest and youngest Magi hunter, they'd call you. A new Magi hero who personally brought down a quirk-enhanced monster. Isn't that what you've always dreamed of? Ryoichi's eyes widened. The fire of ambition flickered in his gaze, growing brighter with every word. The strongest, the youngest. He murmured, swallowing nervously. Ryoichi. Hideo shouted, his voice filled with anger. No. You must not betray the name of the Magi. But Ryoichi didn't respond. His hands trembled as he drew the Magi blade from his belt, the traditional weapon used to finish off bears. Step by step, he approached the injured giant bear. Ryoichi. Hideo shouted again, furious and heartbroken. He turned to Kaminari, his voice filled with rage. What have you done? You've pushed him to betray everything the Magi stands for. Kaminari met the old man's glare without flinching. His voice was calm, almost cold. I didn't push him to do anything, Kaminari said simply. I gave him an opportunity, to achieve his dream through his own efforts. You should be thanking me. He turned to Edgeshot, his golden gaze sharp. This follows the rules, doesn't it? Edgeshot hesitated for a moment before nodding. It does. To be honest, Edgeshot hadn't expected Kaminari to take such a direct approach. He realized that the young hero didn't care about fame or recognition. What Kaminari cared about was solving problems and asserting his own values. Kaminari glanced at the bear one last time before giving an order to his battlesuit's AI. Pikachu, record everything. Make sure to get high-definition shots of Ryoichi finishing the job. Yes, Master, the AI replied. Chapter 167, Establishing the Will of Hero, ES. The rest was simple. Under Hideo's disapproving glare and Kaminari's indifferent gaze, Ryoichi drove his blade into the giant bear's throat, ending its life. The bear, its reserves of blood energy completely depleted, didn't bleed much as it collapsed lifelessly to the ground. It's over. Let's go. Edgeshot retracted the paper limbs he had used to restrain the bear and turned to Hideo Sato, his voice calm. Can you walk? If not, I can carry you. But Hideo, stubborn as ever, ignored the offer and instead glared daggers at Kaminari, his expression full of unspoken fury. Kaminari didn't bother holding back his irritation. Seriously? This is how you treat the guy who saved your life? He crossed his arms, sneering. I'm starting to think you don't know the meaning of gratitude. You know what? On top of being your savior, I'm also your creditor. Hideo remained silent, but Kaminari pressed on, his tone sharpening. That hemostatic agent I gave you? It cost 300,000 yen. Without it, you'd have bled out in the forest. But instead of showing thanks, you're standing here giving me attitude? You've got some nerve. Kaminari, that's enough, Edgeshot said as he knelt down, helping Hideo to his feet. His tone was firm, but not unkind. He glanced at Ryoichi, who looked both guilty and exhilarated, and added, let's just get them to the police station and put this behind us. Fine, Kaminari muttered, exhaling to calm himself. His annoyance eased slightly as his mind cleared. Closing his eyes, he slipped into his meditative state once more. Moments later, the iron sand scattered across the ground began to stir, drawn together by Kaminari's control. The particles coalesced into a sleek, floating iron boat large enough to hold 5 people. 3 chairs rose from the boat's surface, a subtle detail that hinted at Kaminari's meticulousness. Wow! That's incredible, Ryoichi said, watching with wide eyes. Even though he had seen Kaminari's abilities in action before, he still couldn't help but marvel at them. "Get on," Edgeshot said, gesturing toward the boat. He glanced at Hideo, who had turned his back on Kaminari in silent protest, refusing to move. This time, Edgeshot didn't indulge the older man's stubbornness. Without a word, he hoisted Hideo onto the iron ship with ease. As the others boarded, Kaminari remained motionless in his meditative state. A moment later, under the watchful eyes of everyone present, a ball of iron sand gathered at Kaminari's feet. The particles formed into a thin platform that gently lifted him onto the ship. Where does he come up with this stuff? Edgeshot thought, a trace of admiration flickering in his eyes. He may have strong opinions, but there's no denying his talent. The moment Kaminari stepped onto the ship, the iron platform beneath him disintegrated and merged seamlessly with the rest of the vessel. Under Kaminari's guidance, the iron ship began to ascend. It rose above the treetops, granting its passengers a breathtaking view of the vast, unbroken sea of trees below. "Beautiful," Ryoichi murmured, awestruck by the sight. The ship picked up speed, moving smoothly through the air at the pace of a car. Compared to the dense and treacherous forest below, the open sky was a far more efficient path. Before long, they reached their destination, the local police station. "We're here." As the iron ship touched down, Kaminari opened his eyes. The ship dissolved into loose sand beneath their feet, spreading harmlessly across the ground. "Ryoichi," Kaminari said as he walked toward the station with Edgeshot, "turn on your phone. I've sent you the video and photos." Ryoichi's face lit up with excitement, while his grandfather's expression darkened with anger. Still, neither protested as Kaminari's AI, Pikachu, transferred the files to Ryoichi's phone. "Congratulations," Kaminari said with a small smile. "From this moment forward, you're the youngest and most powerful ghost hunter." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Ryoichi stammered, his voice trembling with gratitude. His face broke into a wide grin. Soon, everyone will know about the Magi again." But Hideo clenched his fists, his voice trembling with rage. "Ryoichi! This is a mistake. You're violating our sacred traditions." Ryoichi turned to face his grandfather, his expression firm. "Grandpa, I respect the traditions, but I want the Magi to survive. If that means letting go of outdated rules, so be it." Their argument continued as Kaminari and Edgeshot walked into the station, leaving the two to their unresolved dispute. As they left, Edgeshot glanced at Kaminari, his tone hesitant. "Kaminari, do you hate rules?" Kaminari glanced at him, caught off guard by the question. After a moment's thought, he replied, "It's not that I hate rules. I just don't like when they're too complicated." He shrugged, his tone casual but firm. Rules should make things clear and simple, but when they're overcomplicated, they turn simple situations into massive headaches. "But Kaminari," Edgeshot countered, his voice calm and steady, "as heroes, we can't look at rules through the lens of personal likes or dislikes. Rules aren't just guidelines, they're the foundation of hero society." He paused before adding, "Without rules, heroes are no different from villains. These rules are what define what it means to be a hero." Kaminari's golden brows furrowed slightly at Edgeshot's words but quickly smoothed as he regained his composure. "Don't you think?" Kaminari began hesitantly, "the true meaning of being a hero lies in sacrifice." Edgeshot froze mid-step, his thoughts racing. His mind immediately flashed to the video of Stain, the hero killer, and the ideology it had presented. "Have you seen the Stain video?" Edgeshot asked cautiously, his sharp eyes narrowing as he turned to Kaminari. "Stain? Isn't he that villain who targets heroes?" Kaminari asked, confused. "What video? Did he put something online? What is he, some kind of wannabe influencer like the gentle criminal?" Realizing Kaminari wasn't lying, Edgeshot relaxed slightly, though his expression remained serious. "Then, those words about sacrifice. Were they your own thoughts?" Kaminari scratched the back of his head, chuckling awkwardly. "What's with the serious look?" "I was just talking out loud, trying to figure out the concept of heroism. It's not like I've got it all figured out or anything." Edgeshot shook his head, his tone firm. "No, I want to hear it. Tell me what you've been thinking." He gestured for Kaminari to follow him. "Let's walk and talk." Unbeknownst to Kaminari, Edgeshot was taking this moment very seriously. "This is it, Edgeshot thought. The stage where Kaminari begins to establish his own heroic ideals. It's earlier than most, but for a genius like him, it's not surprising. He glanced at Kaminari, determination flickering in his eyes. As his master, it's my responsibility to guide him through this crucial stage. Chapter 168, The Fantasy Organization of Akatsuki. Someone must bathe in blood, someone must awaken the true heroes. Bring it on. Come on, imposters. The only one who can kill me is the true hero. All might. Stain's bold and extremist declaration echoed through the camp once again. This time, Kaminari was present, sitting alongside Edgeshot, watching the infamous video. Kaminari's expression was frozen in shock. This can't be real. His thoughts spiraled as the realization hit him, leaving him visibly stunned. How is this guy's view of heroes exactly like my own initial thoughts? Kaminari muttered, his voice trembling slightly. The only difference is, he's more radical, more extreme. He actually acts on those beliefs. It all clicked now why Edgeshot had been watching him so carefully earlier. Of course anyone would suspect he'd been influenced by Stain after hearing his own musings on heroism. The difference, Edgeshot spoke, breaking Kaminari's thoughts, is that you are an idealist, a dreamer, while Stain is an actionist. He carries out his vision, no matter the cost. Edging out of his own shock, Kaminari frowned slightly, pondering Edgeshot's words. What do you think? Edgeshot asked, his tone even and calm, yet clearly probing. Kaminari was quiet for a moment, then answered, to be honest, I agree with some of his ideals. But his methods? No. I don't agree with that at all. Edgeshot's gaze sharpened. Then let me ask you, if it were up to you, how would you approach it? The question hung heavily in the air, and Kaminari knew its importance. After a moment of contemplation, he began to answer. First of all, Kaminari started, his tone thoughtful, Stain's method hunting heroes doesn't actually solve anything. It doesn't address the root of the problem he's trying to fix. Go on, Edgeshot prompted, his tone measured, though he felt tension creeping up his spine. Kaminari continued, his gaze calm and steady. The current professional heroes system wasn't created by the heroes themselves. It's a product of government policy and societal structures. If Stain's issue is with the system, then killing a few heroes does nothing to change that. All he's doing is treating the symptoms instead of curing the disease. Edgeshot remained silent but couldn't help the faint unease settling over him. Kaminari's words were strikingly perceptive, perhaps even too perceptive for someone so young. And what would you do? Edgeshot asked carefully, palms beginning to sweat despite his composed demeanor. Kaminari didn't miss a beat. If I were truly determined to change the hero's system, I wouldn't have applied to the hero course in the first place. I would have entered the general studies program, gotten into a top university, and pursued law and politics instead. Law and politics? Edgeshot echoed, his surprise evident. Exactly, Kaminari said, his voice confident now. If the issue lies within the system, then the solution is to enter the system and reform it from within. That's the only way to create real change. As Kaminari spoke, his thoughts drifted momentarily. He imagined an alternate version of himself, one who had chosen that path, fighting through the bureaucracy and navigating political power structures to enact reform. People with powerful imaginations like Kaminari's could envision entire lifetimes in mere moments. In modern society, the so-called hero system only has the name hero, but heroes themselves hold no real influence over it, Kaminari concluded with a hint of bitterness. Edgeshot blinked, genuinely taken aback by Kaminari's depth of thought. For all the youth's carefree and sometimes reckless demeanor, his insight was undeniable. When did you start thinking about these things? Edgeshot asked, his curiosity winning out. Kaminari smiled wryly, rubbing the back of his head. Probably right before I applied to the hero course. I figured if I was going to become a hero, I should think deeply about what heroes actually are. Edgeshot's mouth twitched slightly. Was he being serious right now? He wondered. If you understood all this, Edgeshot asked, why didn't you take the path you just described? Why choose the hero course? Kaminari shrugged nonchalantly. Just because I can see the problem doesn't mean I want to dedicate my life to solving it. Seeing something clearly and committing to it are two very different things. He leaned back slightly, his tone light and unbothered. Let's face it, fixing something that massive would be exhausting. Besides, I chose the hero course because it sounded fun. What's not to like? Getting a hero license, helping people now and then, and being a star? Sounds like a good time. Edgeshot blinked, struggling to process the casualness of Kaminari's response. In all his years as a hero, he'd never met someone who viewed the profession with such flippancy. All right, master, Kaminari said with a grin, throwing up his hands. Does that clear it up? Stain and I couldn't be more different. Edgeshot exhaled slowly. It does, he admitted, though his gaze remained serious. But let me say this, Kaminari. He locked eyes with his student, his tone firm but not unkind. I don't ever want to find us standing on opposite sides of the battlefield one day. Neither do I, Kaminari replied softly. Internally, he added, as long as my family is here, as long as they're safe, I'll follow the rules for the rest of my life. With that, Kaminari returned to his cabin while Edgeshot disappeared into the forest, muttering about needing something other than grilled fish for dinner. Kaminari exhaled deeply as he settled onto the tatami mat, his thoughts swirling. The video and conversation had left him unsettled, though he wouldn't show it. Stain, hey. He murmured, staring at the ceiling. If I'd been born into a different life, maybe I would have ended up like him. His mind wandered to a hypothetical scenario, meeting Stain earlier, perhaps even joining him. Together, they could have formed an organization dedicated to rooting out corruption in hero society. Something grand. Something powerful. An alternate version of Akatsuki, hey. Kaminari mused aloud, chuckling at the absurdity of his own thoughts. Except instead of chasing tailed beasts, we'd hunt corrupt heroes. The idea amused him, but only briefly. His life now, despite its complications, was too precious to trade for something so dangerous. With a small smile, Kaminari pushed those fleeting fantasies aside. My life's pretty good as it is, he murmured. Then, with a sharp clap of his hands, he called out, Pikachu, contact Dr. Tenma. Yes, master, the AI replied smoothly, its familiar tone grounding Kaminari as he refocused on the tasks ahead. Asterisk. Chapter 169, The Man Who Dares to Challenge All Might. Even though the time was brief, I'm grateful for the guidance you gave me, master, Kaminari said sincerely, bowing slightly to Edgeshot. Edgeshot's expression remained calm as he replied, I've learned much from watching you as well. For that alone, I owe you my thanks. He paused briefly before continuing, I'm still refining my shuriken technique, but I should have it perfected by the time of your next extracurricular activity. I'll teach it to you then. Extracurricular activity. Kaminari blinked in confusion, his mind lingering on the phrase. Did that mean there would be more opportunities like this workplace experience in the future? Let Eraserhead explain it to you, Edgeshot said, cutting off further inquiry. I won't spoil it for you. He glanced up at the sky before urging, all right, time's up. You should get going. Yes, sir. Kaminari responded with a firm nod. Bowing deeply once more, he decisively turned around and headed toward the same station where he'd first met Edgeshot. Kaminari. Edgeshot's voice suddenly called out from behind, stopping Kaminari in his tracks. Before Kaminari could look back, Edgeshot's voice carried a meaningful warning. Stay true to yourself. Never waver from your convictions. I will. Kaminari responded softly but resolutely. Without turning around again, he descended into the underground passage and disappeared from sight. I hope so, Edgeshot murmured, letting out a heavy sigh as Kaminari faded from view. Having such a talented disciple can be worrisome, he muttered to himself. I just hope he takes care of himself. As his words fell, Edgeshot's body began to shimmer. Within moments, he turned completely transparent, vanishing without a trace. Elsewhere. As expected, the internet is buzzing with news about the bus incident, Kaminari muttered, now at the Shinkansen platform. His Pikachu-themed backpack hung from his shoulders, a suitcase containing his hero costume in one hand, and his phone in the other. A notification popped up in the corner of his screen. The headline read, 22-year-old hunter takes down a 5-meter giant bear. Wow, they reported it already. Kaminari clicked the link and skimmed the article. It featured the video he had sent to Ryoichi Sato, alongside text that matched what he'd expected. But with Stain being so popular right now, this probably won't go viral for a while, he muttered, shaking his head with a small laugh. Exiting the article, he whispered to himself, well, it's not my problem anymore. Whether it brings fortune or disaster depends on their luck. About 7 or 8 minutes later, the Shinkansen pulled into the platform. After the cleaning crew finished preparing the carriages, Kaminari boarded and found his seat. Thankfully, the journey this time seemed uneventful. Settling into his seat, he began to reflect on his plans, especially the conversation he had had the day before with Dr. Tenma. The reason he'd reached out to the doctor was simple: his hero costume. Not that there was anything wrong with his current suit, but he wanted to add a new feature. The idea was ambitious, so he had consulted Dr. Tenma to see if it was feasible. After all, it was just a concept. The one who would bring it to life was Dr. Tenma himself. Fortunately, the doctor had been intrigued by the idea. Half-jokingly, Dr. Tenma had even invited Kaminari to join as a creative consultant for his projects, with the promise of a salary. But Kaminari wasn't interested in the job, so he hadn't asked about the pay. If Dr. Tenma can bring this idea to life, I might actually pull off something close to the 5th Kazekage's techniques. He thought to himself, a spark of excitement flickering in his chest. With that thought, Kaminari leaned back and let the Shinkansen carry him home at high speed. Dash! At the edge of a forest, trouble was brewing for Edgeshot. He was now surrounded by a dozen peculiar-looking individuals. Edgeshot, hey? I'm sorry, but we have a few questions for you. Would you mind giving us some answers? A figure who seemed to blur the line between man and woman spoke. Despite his delicate features, the Adam's apple betrayed his true gender. He played with a pink aura that danced in his palm, his tone sly and mocking. The so-called Witch of Enchantment. A criminal who's been wanted for 4 years. How bold of you to appear in front of me, Edgeshot said coldly, his expression unreadable. Quite brave, he added with a sharp edge to his voice. Despite the tension, the witch merely chuckled and waved his hand dismissively. Brave? Not quite. But I've been inspired. You see, I've taken an interest in a few expensive cosmetic products lately. And wouldn't you know it? I just so happened to find a list that seems promising. Oh. Edgeshot's tone was laced with disdain. I suppose my bounty has risen enough to tempt you into taking such a risk. The witch laughed lightly, shaking his head. You misunderstand. My target isn't you. I wouldn't dare pick a fight with someone like you, I'd have to be suicidal to try. He slowly traced his bright red tongue over his lips, smudging the pink lipstick slightly. His smile widened into a predatory grin. I'm looking for Kaminari Denki. He's been with you recently, hasn't he? Edgeshot's eyes narrowed slightly. Why are you looking for him? Let's just say I've been through hell in that forest trying to track you down. But fortune must smile upon my beauty, because the moment I step out, who do I see? You. How lucky is that? Edgeshot didn't respond immediately. His thoughts raced as he tried to piece together why this group was targeting Kaminari. And since you're here, I might as well save myself some trouble and capture all of you, Edgeshot declared, his tone cold and resolute. The witch raised an eyebrow but didn't seem surprised. Instead, the pink aura in his palm intensified. Before we start, though, would you be so kind as to tell me where he is? It would make things so much easier. Edgeshot scoffed. As if I'd betray him to the likes of you. Oh, I see. You're still loyal, the witch teased, though greed sparkled in his eyes. Well, let me be clear, he has something very valuable. Something worth a cool $10 million. Tempting, isn't it? The witch paused to rub his stomach dramatically, pretending to savor the thought. Edgeshot's mind flicked to the golden combat uniform Kaminari had been carrying. So that's it, he thought grimly. Figured it out, didn't you? The witch smirked, his pink aura crackling. So, are you going to tell me where he is, or shall we do this the hard way? Edgeshot's hands moved in a blur, 4 shurikens appearing between his fingers. I'll give you my answer, stay here, where you belong, you vermin. In an instant, 8 shurikens flew from his hands, arcing faintly with precision. Their speed was blinding, leaving only black streaks in their wake. Why must it always come to this? The witch sighed melodramatically, though his actions betrayed none of his feigned fatigue. A wave of pink flames erupted from his body, surging toward the shurikens. For $10 million, I'd take on All Might himself. He snarled, his tone suddenly venomous. So what's a mere number 5 to me? Chapter 170, Pokemon Version Hero Alliance. During the several-hour train ride, most passengers occupied themselves with reading newspapers, listening to music, or playing games. Kaminari, however, had his head buried in a book titled Berkeley Physics Course. The edition he was reading wasn't the modern SI version widely available on the market but the original publication from the 1970s. Of course, such a rare book wasn't something he owned, it had been kindly lent to him by Momo. "Dad, look! Look! I found a Pikachu!" "Pikachu? Oh? Really? Show me where you caught it. Maybe I'll take a walk there later." The playful conversation nearby caught Kaminari's attention, pulling him from the depths of his studies. He glanced to the right, where the voices had come from, and spotted a father and son seated across from each other, both engrossed in their Nintendo 3DS consoles. Judging by their excited chatter, they were playing a game together. However, Kaminari couldn't help but notice the apparent age gap. The boy seemed around 7 or 8 years old, while the father looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s, though it was hard to tell if his appearance was deceiving. "Pokemon still has this kind of hype," Kaminari mused aloud. But his comment went unnoticed. The father and son remained completely focused on their game. "Don't use Vine Whip. Pikachu's health is already down to half. If you use that move, it might faint. Pikachu's only level 5, use Tackle instead." "Got it. Bulbasaur, use Tackle." "Yes. Pikachu didn't faint. It's still hanging on by a sliver of HP. Then what are you waiting for? Throw the Pokeball now. Quickly." Kaminari watched the scene unfold, his expression blank as they continued to ignore his presence. "Really, Uncle? You're a grown man, yet you're as excited as a kid. Isn't that a bit much?" Kaminari thought to himself, slightly amused. "I caught it. I caught Pikachu!" the boy suddenly shouted in excitement. Luckily, the carriage wasn't too crowded, so no one seemed to mind the outburst. So there really is a game. Kaminari thought, curiosity piqued. Instead of interrupting further, he pulled out his phone to check online. After a quick search, he confirmed that his father's company had indeed collaborated with Nintendo to launch a game. It was officially released 3 days ago, Kaminari muttered to himself. Looks like Dad's career is still thriving. That's good to see. As his thoughts drifted, a new idea popped into his mind. Since Dad's ventured into the gaming industry, maybe I could pitch some ideas for games that don't exist in this world yet. Kaminari's mind raced. I wonder if he plans to just sell the rights or if he's interested in forming his own development department. The possibilities began to snowball in his head. If his father were to establish a dedicated game development team, Kaminari could contribute so many ideas from his memory. After all, his mind was filled with creative concepts and intellectual properties. If it works out, we could create something like a Pokemon version of League of Heroes. Kaminari's excitement grew. Replace the heroes with Pokemon, let players start as trainers instead of summoners, and turn the wild monsters into wild Pokemon. For instance, the Dragon Boss could be swapped with Giratina, and we could introduce 5 legendary Pokemon with different attributes as replacements for the Elder Dragon. His imagination spiraled further. Flame Pokemon like Moltres could boost player damage. Rayquaza could increase movement speed, while Lugia could enhance healing abilities. The possibilities are endless. The more Kaminari thought about it, the more excited he became. His inner gamer soul was fully awakened. And there are so many Pokemon to choose from. We'd never run out of new heroes to introduce. He grinned to himself. But this time, we can't partner with Nintendo. We'd need to keep it entirely under our control. This game alone could secure our family's fortune for generations. With these thoughts fueling his excitement, the train eventually reached its destination. Kaminari disembarked, though the father and son remained seated, still immersed in their game. However, something was off. The station sign didn't say Saitama. Instead, it read Shizuoka. Clearly, Kaminari wasn't heading home just yet. First, I'll stop by the Shizuoka district to drop off my battle suit with Dr. Tenma and check on Tetsu's suit while I'm at it, he muttered. With this plan in mind, Kaminari quickly exited the station and hailed a taxi. At this moment, all he wanted was to wrap things up quickly so he could finally return home to see his parents. The taxi ride was much faster than walking. Within minutes, Kaminari arrived at his destination, a traditional Japanese 2-story wooden house. After paying the driver a fare of 4,000 yen, he stepped inside. Akemi greeted him at the entrance and led him straight to the laboratory, where Dr. Tenma was waiting. Finally. I've been waiting for you. Dr. Tenma's tone was as cool and professional as ever, though there was a faint trace of impatience in his voice. Does that mean you've figured out the idea I told you about? Kaminari asked eagerly. I've got a rough prototype in mind. It should work. Dr. Tenma said with a confident smile. Gesturing for Kaminari to follow, he added, come with me. I'll explain the concept and show you something. Kaminari nodded and followed the doctor closely. Soon, they arrived at the same room where he had first seen the cancer's golden cloth. This time, however, the cylindrical glass case held something different, a large white coat. As it slowly rotated within the display, it exuded an elegant aura, almost as if it were being gently blown by the wind. That's Tetsu's new combat suit. Kaminari's golden eyes widened. The coat's design was impressive, but what truly caught his attention was the bold word justice emblazoned across the back as it turned. Even though my suit is cool, this cloak has its own charm, Kaminari murmured, appreciating the craftsmanship. This combat uniform is finished, Dr. Tenma explained. We've already notified Tetsu. He should be arriving soon. Once he gets here, we'll go over the details of the design. But first, let me show you something. Dr. Tenma turned to the ceiling and gave a command, Seideko, bring out prototype No. 2. Understood. One moment, replied a delicate, feminine voice from seemingly nowhere. Before Kaminari could fully process what was happening, another cylindrical glass case emerged from the ground beside the first. Hey? Is that sand? Kaminari stepped closer to inspect the new display. Inside the glass case was a pile of golden sand, glowing faintly under the light. It wasn't a small amount either, nearly 2/3 of the case was filled. Chapter 171, Expensive. Your previous idea was to turn the suit into loose particles, letting artificial intelligence control them to attack and defend, Dr. Tenma began as he gestured to the second glass case. But after studying it all night, I ultimately decided to reject the concept. Dr. Tenma stood in front of glass cover No. 2, adjusting his white lab coat as he turned to face Kaminari. It's not that it's impossible to turn the suit into particles. In fact, that part is relatively simple. The material your battle suit is made of is excellent for shape manipulation. But, he emphasized, pushing his glasses higher on the bridge of his nose. I've already explained this before, the hardness of the cis memory alloy is only comparable to that of steel. If it's used directly in combat without additional structure, it'll sustain damage far too easily. And once it's damaged, we don't have any surplus cis material to repair or replace it. Kaminari listened carefully, nodding as his gaze shifted to the pile of golden sand inside the glass case. He wasn't disappointed by the rejection of his original idea, he trusted Dr. Tenma's expertise to find a better alternative. Then what are these? He asked, gesturing toward the shimmering sand. These are nanomagnetic metamaterials, Dr. Tenma explained. My revised idea is to have artificial intelligence control these particles. They will automatically attack or defend based on your commands and situational needs. But the most critical aspect of this concept, he continued, is establishing a stable connection between these particles and the AI. That part is by far the most challenging. At this point, Dr. Tenma glanced at the battlesuit case Kaminari was holding. So, for now, you'll need to leave your suit with me. Kaminari didn't hesitate to agree. After all, he wasn't likely to need the suit in the immediate future. However, he did set a condition. All right, but it needs to be ready before the final exams. I'm guessing the hero subject's exam will include something like simulated combat. Dr. Tenma raised an eyebrow. When are these final exams? Early July, Kaminari replied. That gives us over a month. That's plenty of time, Dr. Tenma said with a confident smile. Then, as if struck by inspiration, he asked, by the way, do you want to name the new functionality we're adding? It'd help us label it for development. Name it. Kaminari tilted his head, puzzled. Yes. You've already named the existing modes of your suit. So why not name this new mode as well? It'll keep the naming scheme consistent, and we can log it properly in the project files. Oh! Kaminari exclaimed as realization dawned on him. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully, muttering to himself. Gold sand mode? No, that's way too plain and uninspired. It needs something cooler, something dramatic to match the tone of the previous modes. After a moment of deliberation, Kaminari straightened up, a confident smile playing on his lips. Let's call it absolute defense. Absolute defense? Dr. Tenma echoed, raising an eyebrow. What's the reasoning behind that name? Think about it, Kaminari said, gesturing enthusiastically. If everything works out, these gold particles will be controlled by Pikachu, right? Of course, Dr. Tenma confirmed. With Pikachu's processing power, it'll be able to analyze opponents' movements and respond instantly, creating near-perfect defenses. Even if I stand completely still, it'll be almost impossible for most opponents to land a hit on me, unless they're extraordinarily powerful. Kaminari's eyes gleamed as he envisioned the scenario. This is the beauty of artificial intelligence. How many people could break through such a defense? Dr. Tenma nodded, stroking his chin. The name does sound a bit over the top, but it's fitting. I'll approve it. Then, with a faint smile, he added, you have a knack for naming things. I struggled for ages to come up with a name for my son. Naming people is a bit different from naming modes and moves, don't you think? Kaminari said, scratching the back of his head, looking slightly awkward. Quickly changing the topic, he asked, by the way, can you work on a carrying mode for the suit as well? A carrying mode? Dr. Tenma repeated, blinking in surprise. Yeah. The biggest difference between my suit and others isn't just the material, it's the built-in artificial intelligence, right? So, why can't I have the battle suit follow me? Kaminari explained further, it's kind of inconvenient to carry this case everywhere. If the suit could transform into something portable, like a small pet form, that would solve the problem. Maybe, something like Pikachu. Dr. Tenma stared at Kaminari, momentarily speechless at his whimsical suggestion. If Edgeshot were present, he might have patted Kaminari on the shoulder for his bold imagination. Kaminari pointed toward the glass case containing the golden sand. And these particles, they'll need to be portable too. How else can I bring them with me? Dr. Tenma chuckled, shaking his head. You don't need to worry about that. While it may look like a lot, the particles are compressible. Once compacted, they'll only be slightly larger than an orange. What about the weight? Kaminari asked skeptically. Compressing the size doesn't change the mass. That's the clever part, Dr. Tenma explained with a knowing grin. Pikachu will use electromagnetic manipulation to offset the weight. You won't feel it at all. That's amazing! Kaminari exclaimed, thoroughly impressed. He knew the technological level of this world far surpassed that of his previous life, but the more he learned, the more it astonished him. However, he was starting to realize just how advanced this research facility was. The laboratory was clearly one of the most cutting-edge in the world, and Dr. Tenma himself was likely among Japan's top 3 scientists, if not the very best. Since you can compress the sand, can it take the form of a pokeball when compacted? Kaminari asked excitedly. And maybe you could add some cool patterns or designs to it. That's a simple shaping process, Dr. Tenma said with a laugh. He immediately guessed what Kaminari was thinking but agreed without hesitation. However, Dr. Tenma added with a serious tone, I should warn you, all these extra features will come at a cost. The more additions we make, the more expensive it will be. Kaminari froze, realizing he hadn't considered the price. Hesitantly, he asked, how much are we talking about? Let's see. Dr. Tenma said thoughtfully before turning his attention upward. Sadeko, calculate the estimated cost of the modifications we just discussed. Understood, the AI replied, and after a brief pause, the voice delivered a response that made Kaminari's heart sink. Approximately 30 million yen. This estimate excludes the cost of the nanomagnetic metamaterials. 30 million yen. Kaminari stammered, feeling a wave of dread wash over him. Then, a thought struck him. Wait, why are the material costs excluded? Although it was a relief, he needed to understand why. Because if we included them, you couldn't afford it, even if your father's entire company were sold, Dr. Tenma said with a faint smile. Mr. Mitsui personally authorized waiving the material fees for you. At that moment, Kaminari realized just how incredibly valuable his combat suit truly was. Chapter 172, The Code of Justice, Unveiled. Well, I'll need to discuss this with my family. Can you give me a day to think it over? Kaminari asked awkwardly, scratching his head and forcing a sheepish laugh. Internally, he was already bracing himself. If Dad doesn't approve this, I'll have to forget about it. It's way too expensive. No problem, Dr. Tenma replied, hiding his amusement and nodding naturally. Just then, the artificial intelligence system, Sadeko, chimed in with a notification. Dr. Tenma, Tetsu has arrived and is being escorted by Secretary Iguro Akimi. Oh? Perfect timing. Let him come straight in, Dr. Tenma said, motioning for Sadeko to proceed. Kaminari perked up at the news, a smile lighting up his face. He hadn't expected to meet Tetsu this soon, and the thought made him genuinely happy. I wonder if this guy has gotten stronger. If not, he's going to fall even further behind me, Kaminari thought with a chuckle. He knew Tetsu's determination well, so he had shared the basics of the 6 styles with him before. He hoped it would give his friend a long-term goal to work toward. Still, he couldn't help but think about how far he had come himself. After gaining control over electromagnetic force during his workplace experience, Kaminari realized how overwhelmingly dominant it made him against Tetsu's quirk. It was almost tragic, like Marvel's Colossus or Wolverine facing off against Magneto. No matter how durable or regenerative they were, they would still lose outright. Dash. With a soft shhh, the glass doors slid open under Sadeko's control. Kaminari turned to see Tetsu stepping inside, his face lighting up when he spotted him. Kaminari. Tetsu's voice boomed with excitement as he strode over quickly. What are you doing here? Haha, Kaminari laughed. I came to drop off my suit with Dr. Tenma and have some new features added. This workplace experience gave me plenty of new ideas. He then smirked, teasing, but you're a little late. I already got a look at your battle suit, so you missed being the first one to see it. What's that matter? Tetsu waved it off with a laugh. I was a little bummed about not being able to see it with you, but hey, you're here now. We can check it out together. Despite his words, his eyes instinctively wandered toward the display case where the combat uniform was stored. They sparkled with anticipation as he turned to Dr. Tenma. Can I put it on now? Of course, Dr. Tenma said, pointing to a small glass door on the left. Go ahead and get it, then head to that room to change. Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Tenma. Tetsu cheered, hurrying over to the display case. As the glass cover retracted upward, it revealed the full set of gear inside. So it's not just a coat, Kaminari observed as he walked up beside Tetsu. The display included a pristine white suit, a pair of black leather boots, and other accessories. This is basically a marine's formal coat. Kaminari grinned, amused by the sight. Not bad. Kaminari, wait right here. I'm going to change into this now. Grabbing the outfit, Tetsu darted into the changing room without waiting for a reply. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Kaminari and Dr. Tenma alone in the lab. Dr. Tenma, can I ask where else could I get cis memory alloy? Kaminari inquired, crossing his arms thoughtfully. Dr. Tenma looked at him curiously. Why are you asking? I was thinking, if I could get another set, I'd like to create a smart battle suit for Tetsu, Kaminari explained, shrugging casually. Dr. Tenma sighed and shook his head. That's going to be difficult. First, cis memory alloy isn't something you can buy, no matter how much money you have. No one is willing to sell it. The only way to get it is to find it, he continued. But that's an incredibly rare occurrence. As I've mentioned before, this material isn't native to Earth. We still don't know how it ended up here in the first place. Dr. Tenma's voice grew heavier as he shared more. It's possible that it didn't fall from space in the last few centuries, but was brought to Earth either deliberately or accidentally long ago. But one thing is certain, he added. Major countries likely have reserves of cis memory alloy. Long-established conglomerates may also have small amounts. However, the quantity each possesses, where they store it, and how they use it are all closely guarded secrets. His gaze turned serious as he looked at Kaminari. In short, it's extraordinarily rare. For an ordinary individual to own it is almost unheard of, and if they do, it usually doesn't stay in their possession for long. Kaminari frowned, an uneasy feeling settling over him. Dr. Tenma's implication was clear. Are you saying someone might come after my cis memory alloy? Even as the thought crossed his mind, Kaminari's resolve hardened. If anything, this made him more determined to keep his battle suit, not abandon it. His eyes gleamed with quiet confidence. Let them try, if they're bold enough, he muttered under his breath, a faint, cold edge to his tone. Dash. The sound of the door opening snapped Kaminari out of his thoughts. Tetsu stepped out of the changing room, his face beaming with excitement. Kaminari, look at this! He exclaimed, his voice brimming with energy. This combat uniform is incredible. He spun slightly, showing off the white coat with the word justice emblazoned across the back. Man, I can't wait to show Kirishima. He's going to be so jealous. Kaminari and Dr. Tenma both took a moment to examine the suit. The design complemented Tetsu's physique perfectly. The white suit gave him a refined, almost elegant appearance, balanced by the rugged confidence of his personality. Dr. Tenma stepped forward, clearing his throat. Now, let me go over some details one more time. He gestured to the outfit as he spoke. First, the material of the coat of justice is AF super smooth alloy. Its surface is highly resistant to most physical attacks and can even deflect bullets under certain conditions. This feature is crucial, so make sure you use it wisely in battle, he added. Additionally, the entire combat suit has been enhanced with high temperature resistance, low temperature resistance, and insulation properties. While it's not completely immune to these factors, the effects are significant. One more thing, Dr. Tenma said, his tone more serious now. Considering the weakness of your quirk metal fatigue, we've developed an iron supplement system for you. He pointed to Tetsu's coat. You'll find iron injections in your coat pockets. They'll allow you to replenish iron during combat. Got it. Tetsu rummaged through his coat pockets and pulled out a handful of small, color-coded syringes. He frowned slightly at the sight. Wait, why are the ones in the left pocket different colors, while the ones in the right pocket are all silver? The left pocket contains hemostatic agents, stimulants, and analgesics. The silver ones in the right pocket are the iron supplements, Dr. Tenma explained. Those extra pockets looked empty, so I thought it'd be better to make them practical, he added with a smile. We even increased their size to hold more items. Tetsu's grin widened as he listened, his appreciation for the suit growing by the second. He turned to Kaminari, his expression full of gratitude. Thanks, Kaminari. If you hadn't introduced me to Dr. Tenma, none of this would have happened. What Tetsu didn't realize, however, was that Kaminari's original motivation had less to do with helping and more to do with his own amusement. He just really wanted to see Tetsu wearing a formal coat. Chapter 173, Trouble in Saitama. In Saitama City, dusk was setting in. The time had passed 4 p.m., and while many ordinary citizens were enjoying a peaceful afternoon, chaos was unfolding in the city's shadows. Boom! A black figure slammed hard into the iron railing on the roof of a building, the force of impact so great that the railing bent under the strain. The man, bearing a grey-green turtle shell on his back, leaned against the twisted railing, his vision blurry, blood trickling from his mouth. Why are you here, Eraserhead? He groaned weakly, his breath ragged. Shua boom! The man's question went unanswered. His attacker, a man with dark, tired eyes, yanked him forward with a binding cloth before delivering a brutal knee to his chest. Ugh! The turtle-backed man groaned before his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed unconscious. Aizawa Shouta, better known as the stealth hero Eraserhead, stood over the defeated villain. His tired eyes glanced down at the limp body, then shifted to the horizon as the setting sun cast Saitama City in an amber glow. I didn't expect what Edgeshot said to actually be true, Aizawa muttered, tightening the bandages on his arms. Kaminari has really been targeted by these rats. His mind wandered back to the morning, recalling the phone call that had set this entire chain of events into motion. Earlier that day, Aizawa had been preparing tomorrow's lessons at UA High School and finalizing plans for the upcoming final exams. He hadn't expected his phone to buzz with an urgent call from Edgeshot. Eraserhead, Kaminari's on someone's list. They've put a bounty on his combat uniform, $50 million. Edgeshot's voice sounded rough, as if he had just finished fighting. What? Aizawa's normally calm demeanor cracked, and he checked the caller ID again to confirm it was indeed Edgeshot. I don't know the full details, Edgeshot continued, but I'm certain there are rats hiding in Saitama, planning to make a move. Notify the local hero office and have them keep an eye out, especially around Kaminari's house. Aizawa didn't waste a second. He transferred the call to U.A.'s principal, Nizu, who immediately sprang into action. Nizu instructed Aizawa to head to Saitama, while Midnight, who was already vacationing there, was tasked with leading her assistants to guard Kaminari's family. Meanwhile, Aizawa, a veteran hero accustomed to operating in the shadows, scoured the city for signs of danger. His experience paid off. By dusk, he had already intercepted and apprehended 3 separate groups of rats. This turtle-backed man was from the third wave, while the others had been turned over to the police. Aizawa stood on the rooftop, looking over the sprawling city. His sharp eyes focused on the direction of the Saitama City subway station. "I'll have to talk to Kaminari about this later," he muttered. "This kid is something else. Has there ever been another 15-year-old who ended up on a Dark World's bounty list?" Shaking his head, Aizawa adjusted his yellow goggles and tugged lightly on the bandages wrapped around his arms. Then, with practiced ease, he leapt from the rooftop, carrying the unconscious turtle-backed villain. "Let's send a message," he thought grimly. "If we hit these rats hard enough, the others might think twice before coming after him." To be honest, Kaminari's personal safety wasn't what concerned Aizawa, Edshot, or Nizu the most. They all knew that Kaminari was far more powerful than the average villain, perhaps even stronger than some of the more notorious ones. No, the real concerns were twofold. First, Kaminari's temper. If pushed, he might accidentally violate the law by using his quirk on others. Second, and more importantly, the safety of Kaminari's family. Nizu had planned carefully for both contingencies. Midnight was protecting Kaminari's family with a team of assistants, while Aizawa handled the cleanup of any potential threats. And as for the third layer of Nizu's plan? That was already underway. At the Saitama City subway station, Kaminari stepped off the train alongside Tetsu. "Hello, I'm Megure-jisen from the Saitama City Police Department," said a large, rotund officer standing in their path. He was accompanied by several other officers. "You must be Kaminari Denki from Class 1A of UA High School's Hero Course." "Yes, that's me," Kaminari replied, his brows furrowing in confusion. "What's this about?" The station was bustling, and many bystanders were already pulling out their phones to snap pictures of the scene. Kaminari's eyes flicked toward them, his expression hardening. "Don't worry," Officer Megure said reassuringly, rubbing his large belly with one hand. "You're not in trouble. Can we talk while we walk?" Kaminari hesitated, then nodded. "All right, but if this isn't anything serious, I'll need you to clarify that to the public. Being seen stopped by the police could cause me a lot of unnecessary trouble." "Of course," Officer Megure replied with a casual smile. "But once you hear the situation, I think you'll understand." "Fair enough," Kaminari said before glancing at Tetsu. "Does he need to come too?" "No." Before Officer Megure could finish, Tetsu interrupted loudly, "I'll go too." His expression was firm, and his reasoning was simple. If Kaminari was in trouble, then as a friend, it was his duty to stand with him. If these officers tried anything suspicious, he wouldn't hesitate to fight alongside Kaminari. "All right then, come along," Megure said, shrugging when he saw Kaminari's approving nod. The group quickly left the station, piling into a police car as curious onlookers continued snapping pictures. Saitama City was Kaminari's hometown, and his family's company was based here. Naturally, he was a local celebrity. The sight of him being escorted by police quickly began to trend online as Kaminari Denki arrested. As they drove through the city, Officer Megure began explaining the situation to Kaminari and Tetsu. The more Kaminari listened, the more his heart sank. His earlier naivety was glaringly clear now. The villains weren't necessarily after him, they might target his family instead. "How are my parents?" Kaminari asked, his voice tense. "They're fine," Officer Megure replied from the passenger seat. "Midnight is with them now, and we've marked your home for special protection. Everything's secure." Hearing this, Kaminari breathed a small sigh of relief. "Your situation is certainly unique," Megure continued. "It's rare to see someone as young as you targeted like this. According to Edshot, though, it's not you they're after, it's your combat uniform. Can you tell me where it is now?" Kaminari lowered his head slightly. "I already handed it over to Dr. Tenma for modifications. Tetsu just picked up his new uniform, so we left together." As soon as Kaminari finished speaking, the officer driving the car briefly glanced at him through the rearview mirror. The look in his eyes was fleeting, gone in a flash, but it didn't go unnoticed. 10 minutes later, they arrived at the apartment where Kaminari's family lived without incident. Officer Megur's brow furrowed slightly. Strange, he muttered under his breath. We assumed they'd try to intercept us on the way. Are they planning something for tonight instead? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. That's very possible. Chapter 174, The Inexplicable Villains. Urgent footsteps echoed down the building's hallway, followed by the rapid sound of buttons being pressed on an electronic keypad. A moment later, a soft, cheerful voice greeted Kaminari as he entered the apartment. Pikachu. The welcome chime sounded. But Kaminari had no time to pay attention to it. He dashed straight into the house, shouting, Dad! Mom! My son's home! However, as Kaminari took in the scene in the living room, he froze. The atmosphere wasn't anything like he had expected. There was no panic, no anxiety. Instead, the room was calm, almost serene. His parents and Midnight were seated on the sofa, chatting and sipping black tea as though nothing had happened. Son, you're finally back! His mother exclaimed, standing to greet him with a warm smile. She took his arm, her expression brimming with joy. I've been so worried about you this past week. Let me take a good look at you. You're all okay? Kaminari asked hesitantly, looking around the room. His gaze lingered on his father and Midnight, but both smiled at him reassuringly. Of course, we're fine, his father said, his tone calm and steady as he took another sip of black tea. Teacher Midnight has already explained the situation to us. Don't worry, we're not so fragile that we'd be helpless in the face of a little trouble. Kaminari's father set his cup down and leaned forward slightly. The important thing now is solving the problem, not dwelling on it. That's why we've been discussing solutions with Teacher Midnight. What kind of solutions? Kaminari asked as his mother gently guided him to sit on the sofa with her. In addition to police protection, his father explained, I've reached an agreement with Midnight's hero office. They'll take full responsibility for the security of this apartment. We've already informed the property management. He gestured to a document on the table before continuing, I'm also planning to hire a professional hero as a personal bodyguard. I'm in the process of reviewing candidates now. Kaminari stared at his father in surprise as he listened. Midnight had clearly informed them of the situation, including Kaminari's strength, but his father had correctly identified the real issue, the safety of the family. By ensuring his and his wife's security, Kaminari's father knew he could give his son the peace of mind needed to focus on his own priorities. For Kaminari, seeing his father take charge like this filled him with relief. Dad, you're handling this perfectly, Kaminari admitted, his tone softening. Then, glancing at Midnight, he added, but this can't be cheap, right? His father smiled faintly. No matter the cost, these things need to be done, he replied firmly. Money comes and goes, but family comes first. Kaminari's father leaned back slightly and added, besides, I'm also in talks with Mitsui to order an advanced intelligent security system for the entire community. I suggested moving to a different place, Kaminari's mother interjected with a shake of her head. But your father refused, insisted on spending more money instead. And why should we move? Kaminari's father countered, his tone sharp and unyielding. Why should we give up our home just because some rats want to cause trouble? Let them come. I'm not going to run away from a problem like this. Kaminari's father's voice softened slightly as he continued, this house isn't just a building. It's the home I worked hard to buy so I could marry your mother. I'll never forget the look on her face, how she smiled and cried when she first saw it. This is our home, and we're not leaving. His words struck Kaminari deeply, filling him with a sense of pride and admiration. In this moment, he saw his father as a strong, resolute figure, the true head of their family. Mom, Kaminari said, clenching his fists, I agree with Dad. We're not moving. Inside, however, anger simmered in his chest. His thoughts turned dark as he vowed silently, anyone who dares to come here will regret it. And whoever put that bounty on me, I'll find you and I won't hold back. Kaminari, Midnight said suddenly, her calm voice breaking through his thoughts. She had noticed the cold look in his eyes. You can't take action yourself. Don't forget you don't have a hero license yet. A hero license? Kaminari let out a small, bitter laugh. This is about my family's safety. Don't expect me to sit still because of some license. If I have to act, I won't hesitate. Kaminari. Midnight's tone turned stern, her brows furrowing. Stay calm. We heroes will protect your family. Your job is to focus on your studies and get your hero license as soon as possible. I am calm, Kaminari replied evenly, his face devoid of emotion. And I'll work hard to earn my license. But if something happens in the meantime, I'll do what I have to. Dash. As his thoughts settled, Kaminari began to reflect on the absurdity of the situation. He hadn't provoked anyone, nor had he gone out of his way to seek conflict. All he had done was receive a combat suit, and now he was the target of a $50 million bounty. Isn't this backward? Kaminari thought irritably. Aren't villains supposed to show up after the hero does something to piss them off? What is this nonsense? Dash. Wait a second. Kaminari suddenly realized something. The only people who knew the details of his combat uniform were Tetsu and the team at Mitsui's research base. It wasn't that he suspected Mitsui Bunteis or Dr. Tenma of betrayal. But a spy? That was possible. The mole has to be someone directly involved in the production of the combat uniform, Kaminari muttered to himself. He made a mental note to inform Dr. Tenma about his suspicions. They would need to root out the spy and track down whoever was truly behind this bounty. Dash. What Kaminari didn't know was that Mitsui had already begun taking action. As soon as Mitsui Bunteis received word of the bounty, he initiated an internal investigation at the research base. Additionally, Mitsui activated covert intelligence networks to track down the source of the order. The Yaeyorozua family, too, had joined the effort. The situation not only involved the rare cis memory alloy but also concerned Kaminari personally, a Class 1A student and an important friend to Momo. Chapter 175, Preparations before the night attack. All right, let's trust Midnight and the others. By the way, your homeroom teacher, Mr. Izawa, is here too. Kaminari's mother noticed the growing tension between Kaminari and Midnight and stepped in to diffuse it with a smile. Teacher Izawa. Kaminari's attention immediately shifted. He hadn't expected his class teacher to be involved in this situation as well. Where is he? He went out to deal with the rats. This is the kind of thing he's particularly good at, Midnight replied, shaking her head lightly. What about the bodyguard selection? How many options are there now? Kaminari asked, steering the conversation toward the security arrangements. Naturally, he hoped they could hire one of the top 10 pro heroes. Even if the cost was high, it would be worth it. However, he also understood how unlikely that was. Heroes of that caliber rarely took bodyguard jobs unless the client was a high-profile figure like the Prime Minister or royalty. There are 3 options, Midnight began, diving straight into the details. The first candidate is Robe Man, who also lives in Saitama City. We considered him because he's familiar with the local area, and his abilities are fairly decent. Robe Man, you mean that guy with the robe from before? Kaminari asked, frowning. Yes, that's him. No way. Absolutely not, Kaminari said bluntly, shaking his head. He then explained his reasoning. He's too weak. If we can't afford top-tier heroes, we should at least aim for second-tier ones, not third-rate characters like him. Midnight smiled helplessly at Kaminari's bluntness. If that's the case, the second candidate probably won't work either. His strength is about the same as Robe Man's. Midnight wasn't surprised by Kaminari's response. After all, most pro heroes in society weren't top tier. The truth was, the majority of heroes weren't powerhouses. However, Kaminari had grown accustomed to associating with elite figures, so his standards were understandably high. So, does that mean the third candidate is stronger? Kaminari asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Midnight confirmed. The third candidate used to be Endeavor's assistant. He started his own agency 2 years ago and is significantly stronger than most pro heroes. Endeavor's assistant. Kaminari's interest was piqued immediately. Even his parents, who weren't well versed in the hero world, perked up at the mention of Endeavor. Although Endeavor wasn't as universally admired as All Might, his reputation as the perennial number 2 hero made him a household name. Yes, his hero name is Snatch. He's a sand hero, and his quirk is called Sand. However, he has a bit of a rigid personality, a very traditional justice first type, Midnight explained. She sounded slightly annoyed at the prospect of dealing with such a serious character, but she didn't let her personal bias get in the way of recommending him. Interesting, Kaminari murmured. He picked up the roster on the coffee table and quickly flipped through the pages until he found Snatch's profile. The details were thorough, even including a hexagonal attribute chart that outlined his strengths and weaknesses. Good at survival, control, and support. Decent damage output, but lacks range. He's definitely a bodyguard-type hero, Kaminari analyzed, studying the chart closely. He continued reading, focusing on Snatch's quirk description. Quirk: sand can freely transform into and manipulate sand, controlling every particle. Immune to most physical and elemental attacks. As Kaminari read the description, an image formed in his mind. It reminded him of a powerful figure from one of his favorite stories. His Majesty Crocodile of the Seven Warlords of the Sea, Kaminari thought with a small grin. But something puzzled him. With such an impressive quirk, how was Snatch only a second-rate hero at the age of 45? If he could fully utilize his sand manipulation and partial transformation abilities, he should easily rank higher. Dad, let's go with him, Kaminari said decisively, closing the roster. He was already thinking about how he could help Snatch improve. If the hero had the right guidance, he could fully unlock the potential of his quirk. After all, the stronger Snatch became, the better he could protect Kaminari's father. What could a first-year student possibly teach a pro hero with decades of experience? Not much in terms of combat tactics. But when it came to creative uses of sand manipulation and elementalization, Kaminari had plenty of ideas. After all, his inspiration came from legends like the Second Kazekage and Crocodile. Snatch's employment fee is 2 million yen per month, Midnight reminded him. 2 million. Kaminari muttered, glancing at his father. His father simply smiled confidently. Don't worry about the cost. We've got it covered. Thanks to the booming success of the Pokemon IP, their finances were more than secure. Kaminari's father's firm confidence made it clear that money wasn't an issue. Understood, Midnight said, pulling out her phone. I'll contact Snatch right away. Dash. As Midnight made the call, the doorbell rang. Kaminari got up to answer it and found Officer Megure, who had accompanied him earlier. Mr. Kaminari, Megure began, addressing Kaminari's father, our current intelligence suggests that the villains might make their move tonight. For your safety, I strongly recommend staying indoors. We've already deployed strict security measures in this neighborhood, Megure continued. With the cooperation of the Midnight Office and the Saitama Police, you can rest assured that you are well protected. Kaminari's father stood and exchanged polite words with Officer Megure, thanking him for his efforts. Kaminari watched from the side, impressed by his father's charisma. His father's ability to navigate situations like this made it clear that his company's success wasn't solely due to the Pokemon IP. His eloquence and leadership were equally important. Dash. Meanwhile, Tetsu, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. Kaminari, do you think my combat uniform will be targeted too? He asked nervously. If his uniform was as valuable as Kaminari's, wouldn't that put his father at risk as well? Well. Kaminari hesitated, unsure of how to answer. The possibility was definitely there. After all, Dr. Tenma had mentioned how expensive Tetsu's combat uniform would have been if its materials weren't subsidized. Maybe you should head home and check on your dad, Kaminari suggested. But didn't they say the villains might attack at night? Should I really leave now? Tetsu looked conflicted. You're not allowed to take action here anyway, Kaminari reminded him with a helpless smile. Midnight's warning about hero licenses had been clear. After a moment of thought, Tetsu nodded. All right, I'll go home and check on my dad. He's my only family, after all. Don't worry, Kaminari assured him. We agreed to fight side by side if something happens. It was a small lie. If a battle did break out, Kaminari didn't want to drag Tetsu into the chaos. Still, he didn't want his friend to feel abandoned either. Chapter 176, A Father's Responsibility. After Tetsu left, the sky gradually darkened. Soon, a bright crescent moon hung in the night sky. At the same time, the atmosphere in the community where Kaminari's family lived grew increasingly tense. Remember, don't take action unless it's absolutely necessary. And if you do, make sure not to kill anyone, Aizawa instructed Kaminari firmly. The class teacher, who had returned with a commanding presence an hour earlier, was now preparing to head out again. Yes, thank you. Kaminari responded sincerely, bowing as he watched Aizawa leave. To be honest, Kaminari was deeply grateful. He appreciated not only Aizawa's efforts to protect his family but also the support from Midnight and Principal Nizu, who had coordinated everything despite not being here in person. This experience only solidified Kaminari's respect and admiration for UA. High School. Mr. Kaminari, Snatch just responded to my message. He said he's currently handling a mission in Tokyo, so he can't make it here tonight, Midnight informed Kaminari's father after checking her phone. When will he arrive? Kaminari's father asked, his brow furrowing as he sat on the sofa. Before 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Midnight replied while putting away her phone. That's acceptable, Kaminari's father nodded. Given how suddenly all this had happened, he couldn't expect Snatch to drop everything at a moment's notice. Time passed slowly. The hands of the clock ticked steadily onward, and no one in the house could relax enough to sleep that night. But as the moon disappeared and the first rays of the sun peeked over the horizon, the suspected night attack never came. This is... Officer Megure looked visibly embarrassed. He and his team had worked tirelessly throughout the night, only for nothing to happen. They must have caught wind of our preparations, Aizawa said as he approached the officer. I just finished checking some of the darker areas in Saitama. Aside from the usual petty criminals, I didn't find any wanted villains. Aizawa's theory wasn't entirely wrong, but the reality was more specific. The villains had learned that Kaminari's combat uniform had been returned to the Mitsui group. Since their primary target was the suit itself, they no longer had any reason to target Kaminari directly. When Kaminari explained this to everyone later, the realization brought a collective sigh of relief. Both Officer Megure and Midnight looked noticeably more relaxed, while Aizawa's expression remained stoic as usual. Kaminari, do you really need that combat uniform? Midnight asked after a moment of silence. Can't you just switch to a different one? Kaminari hesitated. He knew she had a point. Keeping the suit would undoubtedly invite more trouble in the future. While he wasn't afraid for himself, what about his parents? Son, you must really like that combat uniform, don't you? Kaminari's father asked calmly, his eyes fixed on his son. Kaminari paused before nodding. Yes. His voice was quieter than usual, and for a moment, the normally self-assured boy looked like any other 15-year-old. And, his father continued, since the suit is valuable enough to warrant a $50 million bounty, it must be an excellent tool that will help you achieve your goals, right? Yeah, Kaminari admitted, nodding again. Though his father hadn't said much yet, Kaminari was beginning to understand what he was trying to convey. He felt a mix of guilt and gratitude building inside him. In that case, don't give it up. Kaminari looked up, surprised by the firmness in his father's voice. If this combat uniform is something you cherish, then it's my responsibility to protect it, his father said firmly. Just like I refuse to give up the home I've worked so hard to build, I won't let you give up something that's important to you. His father's words struck a chord deep within Kaminari. For the first time, he truly saw his father not just as a loving parent but as the head of their family, strong, determined, and willing to shoulder any burden for his loved ones. Son, his father said, leaning forward slightly, always remember this, what you cherish, your mother and I will cherish too. That's what family is for. Understood? Yes. Kaminari shouted, his voice filled with conviction. I got it, Dad. Midnight and Aizawa exchanged a glance at the heartfelt scene, but neither spoke. It was clear the moment carried a weight that didn't need their input. Even though there was no attack last night, that doesn't mean we can let our guard down, Aizawa said after a pause. Don't worry about that, Midnight replied. Our office has already transferred 50 pro heroes to assist with security. They'll be working closely with the police to ensure this community remains safe. And once Snatch arrives, the defense level will increase even further, she added, adjusting her glasses. Snatch? Hey. Aizawa said, nodding in approval. Good choice. He's a solid hero. Turning to Kaminari, he continued, Kaminari, even though you didn't sleep last night, you're still coming to school with us. Kaminari blinked. Hey? No exceptions. You should remember what I told you at the start of the school year, Aizawa said firmly. As a student in the hero course, it's best not to ask for leave unless it's absolutely unavoidable. Can't he rest for one day? Kaminari's mother asked worriedly, but before Aizawa could respond, Kaminari smiled. It's fine, Mom. Missing one night of sleep won't affect me, Kaminari said with a reassuring grin. Besides, Mr. Aizawa and Midnight didn't sleep either, right? I might not be as strong as them yet, but I won't lose to them in willpower. Aizawa nodded slightly, his expression calm as ever, though there was a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. In that case, Kaminari's mother said, brushing her hair behind her ear, let's have breakfast first. Then the teachers can accompany you to school. Aizawa hesitated for a moment, but Midnight quickly chimed in, that sounds great. Thank you. Hearing this, Kaminari's mother smiled warmly. Please, make yourselves at home. Seeing no reason to refuse, Aizawa nodded as well. While he often came across as withdrawn, he knew when to accept simple gestures of hospitality. Later, as Kaminari's mother prepared breakfast and his father escorted Officer Megure out, Aizawa took a seat on the sofa next to Kaminari. Kaminari, when your combat uniform is finished, keep it stored at UA and make that information public, Aizawa suggested. Got it, Kaminari replied. He understood exactly what Aizawa was implying. By storing the combat uniform at school, the responsibility and any potential threats would shift to UA itself. For Japan's top hero school, such pressure was negligible. With All Might and a host of pro-heroes on campus, any attempts to retrieve the suit would be nothing more than a futile gesture. Chapter 177, The Growth We Are About to Witness. After eating the breakfast carefully prepared by his mother, Kaminari followed Aizawa and Midnight to school under his mother's worried gaze. It's worth mentioning that Kaminari had also called Tetsu, asking if he wanted to go together, even though it was still quite early. After all, it was only 6 in the morning. But since Aizawa and Midnight were teachers, they had to arrive an hour earlier than the students to prepare. As for Tetsu, it was no surprise to see him waiting at the entrance of the subway station. Nothing happened to your family last night, right? Kaminari asked. No, it was quiet. How about yours? Tetsu shrugged and smiled. Nothing happened. But I stayed on guard all night yesterday. Tetsu replied with a hint of frustration. Oh? You stayed up all night, too? Kaminari raised an eyebrow, surprised. That didn't seem like something Tetsu would do. Well, I wanted to stay up, but while I was waiting for your call, I fell asleep at some point, hehe. Tetsu sheepishly scratched his white hair, a bashful grin on his face. Kaminari followed the two teachers onto the Shinkansen and shook his head with a wry smile. He couldn't decide whether Tetsu was being overly tense or simply carefree. But really, what if someone had actually attacked him in his sleep last night? After settling into their seats, Aizawa fell asleep almost instantly, while Midnight pulled out her phone and began scrolling through it habitually. Hey, Kaminari, you seem to be trending online. Midnight remarked with a grin. Hey. Kaminari blinked in confusion. Wasn't he already popular? I mean, it's blowing up online right now, she clarified, turning her phone toward Kaminari. Then, with a teasing tone, she added, people are saying you got arrested for committing a crime. Ah, I figured that'd happen, Kaminari sighed helplessly as he glanced at the screen. The photo in question showed him and Tetsu being escorted into a police car, surrounded by several officers. Seeing that Kaminari didn't seem particularly bothered, Midnight asked curiously, aren't you worried? If this keeps up, you might lose a lot of fans. I don't really care about losing followers, Kaminari replied casually. After all, I earned my current popularity through my work. As long as I keep producing good work in the future, I don't have to worry about fans or public opinion. He then explained to Midnight about his earlier conversation with the officer. I see. Midnight said with a nod of understanding. However, she couldn't help but feel impressed by Kaminari's composure. For a teenager just shy of 15 years old, it was remarkable for him to think so clearly and rationally in such an unexpected situation. And honestly, if you think about it, this could be a good thing, Kaminari continued. The more people misunderstand me or criticize me now, the more they'll feel guilty when the truth comes out. Those same people will probably become more loyal fans afterward, feeling like they owe me. He chuckled, his confidence clear as he spoke about his strategies for managing his public image. Midnight was momentarily stunned, both by his words and his confidence. Her interest was piqued after all. In this world, professional heroes weren't just heroes, they were also a type of celebrity. Their rankings on the hero billboard chart didn't solely depend on the number of cases they solved or their contributions to society. Public support and popularity also played a crucial role. Essentially, their fan base mattered. Where did you learn all this? Do you know some celebrity insiders? Midnight leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand as she gazed at Kaminari with interest. I just researched it myself, Kaminari replied smoothly. I've always planned on being a star since I was a kid. Once I achieve my goal of becoming Japan's top star, I'll expand internationally. Korea, the United States, China, you name it. He spoke with practiced ease, covering up the real source of his knowledge. After all, his previous life's internet was filled with countless celebrity scandals and PR tactics. Those were basically real-life lessons in how to navigate fame. In this world, however, most of the media focused on professional heroes, so the public didn't see much of the usual celebrity drama. Instead, headlines were dominated by repetitive stories like which villain did so and so capture last month? Or how many missions did this hero complete this week? Or even will their ranking go up or down next month? Frankly, Kaminari found it dull. If it weren't for the flashy spectacle of quirks, it'd hardly be interesting. But hey, the public loved it, so who was he to judge? And so, for the rest of the train ride, Kaminari and Midnight enthusiastically discussed various methods for managing and cultivating a fan base. Tetsu, meanwhile, stared at them in disbelief, completely speechless. What made it even funnier was that Midnight eventually pulled out a notebook and, like a diligent student, began jotting down notes on the key points Kaminari mentioned. I see now. Relying solely on a sexy image has too narrow a reach when it comes to attracting fans. She muttered thoughtfully, pen in hand. The 1-hour train ride passed quickly amidst their lively conversation. Soon enough, the group arrived in front of UA High School. As expected, given the early hour, the campus was still relatively quiet. Only a few diligent students and teachers could be seen entering the school. Most of the students appeared to be from the general studies or support classes. All right, you two head to class and rest for now, Aizawa instructed. Tetsu, hand over your new combat uniform. You'll all receive them during the Hero Basics course this afternoon. Then, turning to Kaminari, he added, as for you, just use your previous battle uniform. Yes, sir. Kaminari replied, a bit surprised that the school had kept his old uniform. With that, Aizawa and Midnight headed to their offices. Before leaving, however, Midnight gave Kaminari a playful wink, just her usual mischievous self. Kaminari could only shake his head helplessly at her antics. Kaminari. Tetsu. A familiar voice suddenly called out from behind. Turning around, the two saw the person they had both been thinking about. It was Kyoka waving excitedly as she ran toward them. The golden light of the morning sun framed her figure, making her look even more vibrant. Kyoka. The three of them didn't realize it at first, but the scene felt almost identical to when they had first entered UA. The same youthful energy. The same joy. Maybe this was the unique fragrance of friendship blossoming on campus, a sense of reunion filled with shared memories and experiences. Today's Hero Basics course was bound to be lively and exciting. After all, growth is best witnessed through the support of your comrades. Chapter 178, Kaminari's New Idea. Hey, Kyoka. Tetsu raised his hand and greeted loudly. Long time no see, Kyoka. Kaminari took 2 quick steps forward, smiling warmly. How was your workplace experience? It was great. I had such a fulfilling week. I got to see pro heroes working up close, and I even helped during an arrest. Although I didn't actually participate in the fight. Kyoka, usually more reserved, seemed extra energetic today. Maybe it was because she was reunited with Kaminari and Tetsu, or perhaps she just wanted to share her experiences. Wow, look at you, girl! Kaminari exclaimed, giving her a big thumbs up. But before he could say more, Kyoka's expression soured. I told you not to call me girl like that. Hee, okay. Kaminari scratched the tip of his nose awkwardly. He hesitated for a second, then relented. To be honest, he wasn't sure why Kyoka disliked being called that. Could it be she was in some sort of rebellious phase? After some thought, Kaminari shrugged and added, Fine, I won't call you girl anymore. Happy now? Good. Although she thought Kaminari's expression was a bit odd, Kyoka nodded in satisfaction. Internally, though, she muttered to herself, I need to break him of that habit before it sticks. Girls mature faster than boys, after all. Unfortunately for Kyoka, Kaminari's mental age was far ahead of hers, and he couldn't help but find her overthinking amusing. Still, he thought, a 15-year-old girl was basically still a kid. Better to leave that conversation for another time. Kyoka, guess what? The new battlesuit Kaminari designed for me is finally done. You'll get to see it this afternoon. Tetsu, unable to hold back his excitement, began enthusiastically describing every detail of his new battlesuit, the design, the functionality, and even the backstory behind it. From the school gate to the classroom, Tetsu kept talking, his excitement palpable. Thankfully, there weren't many people around this early in the morning, so he didn't draw too much attention. By the way, Kyoka, how come you're here so early? Kaminari asked as they arrived in Class 1A's homeroom. He hung his bag on the hook beside his desk, then glanced at her curiously. Your house isn't exactly close by, right? You usually get here about an hour later. Well. Kyoka hesitated, suddenly a bit flustered. The truth was, she'd stayed up all night playing her bass, running through every single one of Kaminari's songs over and over again. But she wasn't about to admit that. Didn't I just want to see you guys earlier? She muttered, her cheeks slightly pink. Oh, by the way, Kaminari, what's up with those photos online? As if she'd just remembered something important, Kyoka's tone shifted. Last night, before going to bed, she'd checked her phone as usual, scrolling through social media and, of course, Kaminari's account. That's when she stumbled upon the trending news, Hero Corps student and rising star Kaminari Denki arrested by police. She'd been worried sick ever since. In fact, the real reason she'd come so early was that she hadn't been able to sleep at all. Her sudden question caused Tetsu to fall silent, glancing nervously at Kaminari. What's wrong, Tetsu? Do you know something? Kyoka asked sharply. Her instincts were sharp, and she immediately picked up on Tetsu's hesitation. She turned to Kaminari, her expression clearly saying, You'd better explain this. All right, Kaminari said with a small laugh, scratching the back of his head. There's no need to get worked up. Truth be told, he had hesitated for a moment. But he knew that if he didn't explain, Kyoka would only be more upset. And the last thing he wanted was to let her down. With a calm tone, Kaminari began recounting the events of the past day. Tetsu, who had been nervously watching the exchange, let out a small sigh of relief. He'd almost spilled the beans earlier, but he was glad Kaminari had decided to handle it himself. Tetsu had good instincts when it came to moments like this. While he and Kaminari were close, he knew better than to speak for someone else, especially when it came to something this serious. After about 2 minutes, Kaminari finished his explanation. Oh my god! Kyoka muttered, the English slipping out instinctively. She rarely spoke English, but it perfectly captured her shock at the moment. She opened her mouth, trying to say something, but no words came out. Hey, it's fine, Kaminari said with a reassuring smile. Didn't you just say yourself? My dad's got everything under control. And as for me, don't you think they're the ones who should be worried? His confident grin and exaggerated tone seemed to snap Kyoka out of her daze. That's true. She murmured, her worry easing as she remembered Kaminari's strength. After all, this was the same guy who needed All Might to intervene to stop him during a previous fight. By the way, let's not mention this to anyone else when they get here, Kaminari added. If they ask, I'll just brush it off. Kyoka nodded, understanding his reasoning. There was no need for everyone to know. What about Momo? Tetsu asked. She's part of the band too, right? She already knows. In fact, she probably knows more about the situation than I do, Kaminari replied, glancing out the window at the morning light. Right. Tetsu and Kyoka exchanged a look, both realizing how deeply connected Momo's family was. As the heiress of the Yaeyorozua family, she probably had access to information they could only dream of. Speaking of battlesuits, Kaminari said, changing the subject as he returned to his seat, I have an idea for yours, Kyoka. Something that could improve your mobility and combat effectiveness. Want to hear it? You've got another idea? Tetsu exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. He turned to Kyoka, adding enthusiastically, let me tell you, Kyoka, Kaminari's a genius when it comes to designing battlesuits. This is something even Drive Tenma acknowledged. Dr. Tenma. Kyoka tilted her head in confusion, the headphone jacks dangling from her earlobes swaying slightly with the movement. No clue who that is, she admitted. As someone deeply immersed in the music world, she didn't pay much attention to the scientific community. Anyway, Kaminari interrupted with a small wave, we're here early, so let's talk about it now while it's quiet. Sure. Kyoka agreed readily, though she wasn't particularly concerned about her battlesuit. What mattered to her was that Kaminari cared enough to think about it. No matter what he says, I'll act super excited and agree with it, she resolved to herself. This simple thought filled her heart with warmth. She'd already decided, whether the idea fit her or not, she'd spend the money to have it made and wear it with pride. Okay, here's the idea. Kaminari leaned forward, a serious expression settling on his face. Didn't you mention that when you plug your headphone jack into a speaker, you can control the volume of the heartbeat sound? As he began explaining, Kyoka couldn't help but notice how focused he looked. For all his goofiness, Kaminari had a certain charisma when he got serious, confident, driven, and, in his own way, undeniably cool. My idea is this. Comment. 2 comment. Vote. 1 left. Chapter 180, Chapter 179, Batgirl. Kyoka, if I remember correctly, your battlesuit has 2 speakers on the calves that transmit sound waves from your heartbeat through your quirk, then amplify it into a sonic boom, right? That's right. Kyoka nodded curiously and added, I can also pick up subtle sounds that most people can't hear. Oh, right. I almost forgot about your enhanced hearing. That gives me even more ideas, Kaminari said as his eyes lit up. He quickly calmed himself and returned to the main topic. Let's start with your battlesuit. Why do the speakers have to stay fixed on your legs? Couldn't we place them somewhere else? Or maybe install additional speakers on other parts of your body? Kyoka tilted her head, intrigued but slightly puzzled. I've thought about moving the speakers to my arms, they'd be more flexible there. That's a good thought, Kaminari replied with a nod, but I'm thinking bigger. Instead of just relocating them, why not add more speakers? And of course, we'd improve the ones you already have on your legs. For example, we could add micro sound ports to the soles of your feet. With the right training to control sound wave output, you could use them to enhance your mobility. Theoretically, not only could this increase your speed, but it might even let you fly. Kaminari leaned back, confident in his idea. After all, Kyoka's sound waves had enough force to shatter boulders clearly, they packed plenty of power. Fly. Kyoka's eyes widened in shock, and even Tetsu, who was listening on the side, looked astonished. Well, maybe not full-on flying, Kyoka said, recovering from her initial surprise, but it's definitely possible to boost my speed this way. Exactly. Kaminari said with a grin. If you direct controlled sound waves downward, you could use the propulsion to jump higher and run faster. This idea is genius, Kaminari. Tetsu exclaimed. If she masters this, it could change everything for her. This is just one possibility, Kaminari continued, but we don't have to stop there. We could also add sound ports to the back of your hands, arms, legs, or even your back. With this setup, every punch or kick you throw could have a sonic boom effect. It'd be a great way to cover any weaknesses in close combat. To be honest, Kaminari had borrowed this idea from 2 sound village ninjas, Zaku and Dosu. However, what he was proposing to Jiro was an upgraded, more refined version. After all, as clever as Zaku and Dosu were, their designs were crude, hence why they remained lower-tier ninjas, while Kyoka was aiming for true hero-level gear. As for the battlesuit design itself, Kaminari said, stretching out his right hand, let me show you what I had in mind. Electricity crackled in Kaminari's palm, forming slender threads of golden light that began converging in midair. Within moments, a 3D model of the battlesuit floated above his hand, spinning gently as it shimmered with light. Whoa! Kyoka and Tetsu gasped in unison. This is insane! Tetsu exclaimed. It's definitely cool, Kyoka admitted, though she quickly added with a blush, but don't you think it's a little too revealing? The holographic model of the suit was incredibly detailed, showing every contour. The design featured a pair of very short hot pants that barely covered the thighs, paired with high boots that extended up to the mid-thigh. The sleek, tight fit made the suit exude a wild, edgy style, despite leaving only a small strip of skin exposed between the boots and shorts. Kaminari hesitated. We can change it to long pants if you'd prefer. Don't focus too much on the appearance for now, let me show you the suit's inner structure. He couldn't help but admire the artwork in his hand. Of course, he wasn't formally trained in costume design, so the appearance was inspired by something from his previous life, the sleek, sexy style of Batgirl's costume. He had chosen this design because bats, as creatures associated with sound, felt thematically fitting for Kyoka's quirk. As Kaminari concentrated, the holographic suit split into layers, revealing the detailed inner components beneath the surface. The breakdown resembled Tony Stark's holographic projections in Iron Man, where a full suit would split apart to display its intricate mechanisms. See? The outer layer is just the surface. Now, look at these details, Kaminari said, gesturing toward the hologram. Tetsu and Kyoka, already overwhelmed by the sci-fi display, leaned closer to examine the layers Kaminari pointed out. See these tiny round openings? Yeah, Kyoka said, nodding intently. These are the sound ports I mentioned earlier, Kaminari explained. You'd connect your headphone jacks to a socket near the collar, and the sound waves could then be released from any of these ports. He gestured to several larger ports on the hologram. The ones on your palms, chest, and the soles of your feet are bigger and designed for more powerful sonic booms. We'll call these main sound ports. But, Kaminari continued, the effectiveness of this suit will depend entirely on your ability to control the sound waves. You'll need to train extensively to master the volume, direction, and intensity. After all, no matter how advanced the gear is, it's still just a tool, it's up to you to make it work. He smiled encouragingly, and Kyoka could only nod silently. The sheer depth of thought behind his idea left her at a loss for words. Is it really possible for me to have such a powerful battle suit? Kyoka wondered, her mind racing. Before she could say anything, Tetsu raised a sharp question. Wait, Kaminari, how would Kyoka control where the sound waves are released? Wouldn't that be really difficult?
Thanks for listening.